Just another dead girl. Underwater. Trigger warning. Implications of death, violence, and sexual harassment. By the time the fisherman finds me, I will have been dead for 33 hours, 6 minutes, and 29 seconds. 18 hours since the police declared me missing. 15 hours since Zoe told my biology teacher that my tent was empty, that I hadn't returned from the party we'd snuck out to the night before. Careful, quiet, every twig a possible snitch. It was exhilarating, our hearts pounding, the smell of pine and seaweed thick in the air, and the moon a perfectly curved sickle. Zoe held my sweaty hand and didn't let go until we'd passed the tents and joined the others by the lake. The music on someone's phone was turned down just low enough for us to make out Billie Eilish's raspy voice. One of the guys offered us a beer, kept cool in the pitch black, lurking water. I remember thinking I couldn't tell where the lake ended and the forest began. The first article, published by a local newspaper, reads, "Promising high school student missing after night swim in lake." Shortly after, the Water Rescue Service and Fire Brigade take over the search. Dogs comb the area, their noses trailing through the damp earth. A human chain forms, people moving slowly through the woods, eyes scanning for any sign of me. Even a helicopter hovers overhead, its whirring blades slicing through the heavy, charged air. The search drags on for hours, stretching into the twilight. Yet the woods remain silent. The police begin to ask questions. When was she last seen? What was she wearing? Had she been drinking? Did she seem out of character? Angry? Sad? Suicidal? No, no, and no. She was singing. She was dancing. She seemed happy. When the fisherman finds my body, miles away from where I was last seen, certainty sets in. The autopsy reveals a hematoma on my head and purple spots behind my ears. The coroners examine the water in my lungs and confirm that I wasn't dead before entering the water. I died by drowning. My classmates are questioned again. Zoe claims to have left early, while I stayed behind with her twin brother, Tom, who has been in love with me since middle school. Tom's behavior strikes the police as odd. He insists he barely spoke to me, despite people seeing us leave the party together for a few minutes. When my body is examined, traces of Tom's skin are found on my clothes, trapped between the fabric layers. Still, Tom sticks to his story, perhaps because the truth would embarrass him for some reason. Or maybe he's just afraid of the questions that would follow and the scrutiny that might come with them. Tom is right, you know, in the broadest sense. We really only exchanged 3 or 4 sentences that night, but only because Tom's mouth was otherwise occupied with me. I had enjoyed every second of it, And looking back, I wish I'd given him a real chance. But I was too worried about what other people might think. So, as usual, I brushed him off, leaving him to walk away from the party, feeling hurt. Cassandra insists she heard Zoe and me arguing that night, just before Zoe headed back to the campsite. According to her, we were fighting over Tom. Of course she would say that. What else would two girls argue about, if not a boy? Cassandra even claims that Zoe pushed me, though Zoe denies it vehemently. She denies discussing Tom at all, insisting it was about something else, something that wouldn't come to light until much later, when our biology teacher became a suspect. But Cassandra holds firm to her version. The thing about Cassandra is that she's always been a shadow, the kind of girl whose name teachers forget after 2 weeks of spring break. Kelly, Cindy, Carrie. Something with a Z, though, right? So, when she finally gets the chance to talk to the police and be part of the investigation, she jumps at it. Unfortunately, Cassandra isn't much help to the investigators. She leaves the party at 2 a.m., just 40 minutes before I die, leaving me alone with a group of guys who've brought along some tranquilizers. Sitting next to them felt like being stuck in a fever dream, where Jacques Derrida explains quantum physics at a frat party. At some point, I decided it was time to head back. One of the guys casually asked if I needed someone to walk with me, and I said yes, but no one moved. I glanced back, the campsite faintly visible through the cold, white light filtering through the pines. It was only a few meters away, just beyond the trees. I'd walked this path for days, never once feeling threatened by the shadows in the bushes. But tonight, that sinking feeling in my stomach wouldn't go away. Still, I refused to be that girl, the one who got scared at every creak in the dark, the one who needed someone to hold her hand for a few steps. So I stood up and said I'd walk alone. Instead of sticking to the dark trail, though, I decided to take a small detour along the riverbank, a bit longer, a bit lighter, and hopefully a bit safer. One of the guys told me to text him when I made it to my tent, but when I didn't, no one even noticed. 16 days after my death, suspicion begins to shift toward our biology teacher. Devin, one of my classmates, reveals that he had felt ill that night and went looking for the teacher's tent, only to find it empty. Soon after, the teacher's behavior takes a strange turn. He starts making inconsistent statements that don't add up. One day, he calls Zoe into his office after class, where he insists that his earlier proposal to her before the trip had been nothing but a joke. She understood that, right? It was sarcasm, he says, claiming that what he really meant was that if she wanted to improve her grades, she should consider attending a tutoring service. And this is where Cassandra steps in for the final time. She confesses that she visited our biology teacher after the party and that they went to the boathouse, where, according to her, nothing bad happened. He was just there for me. The biology teacher is immediately suspended, but the case against him has nothing to do with mine, as Cassandra's alibi clears him. Meanwhile, the suspicions surrounding Zoe and Tom are too weak to pursue. My case remains unsolved, and eventually people begin to accept the idea that it was just a tragic accident, that I must have hit my head when I jumped into the water. They agree that I seemed unhappy, not just that night, but in general, and that my relationship with my parents, who expected me to excel in everything, was strained. Perhaps the pressure had finally got to her. It's all unsatisfying, of course. Unsatisfying for the local magazine, whose updates eventually dry up. Unsatisfying for the police, left with yet another unsolved case on their desk. Unsatisfying for my parents, who, decades later, will say in an interview that not a day goes by that they don't think of their little girl. Maybe one day, a classmate will write a college essay about my case, reflecting on how it taught them that life can end in an instant. Maybe my story will end up on a true crime podcast. Or perhaps Netflix will stretch it into a tightly structured 8-episode miniseries where my body is discovered just 3 minutes in. Enough time for viewers to decide if they'll keep watching. Or maybe none of this happens, and I'll fade away like countless other women who are silenced every day simply for being born the wrong sex. It doesn't matter who profits from my story. It doesn't even matter if they eventually find the 2 men I crossed paths with on my way back to the campsite in the wrong place at the wrong time. None of this matters, because in the end, I'm just another dead girl underwater. The quiet island. When Flo heard the car approaching, she darted off the road and crouched low behind an olive tree. She didn't dare move. At 13, she knew how dangerous it was to be out here alone. The car rattled past, the sound fading in the distance, leaving only the hum of crickets. As she stood up, the ground beneath her tilted like the deck of a sinking ship, and she had to clutch the tree for balance. Another dizzy spell. They'd been hitting her all morning. She needed to find food, and soon she stepped back onto the road and started walking. After about an hour, as the sun crept over the mountains, Flo spotted an orange grove a few paces off the road. The ground was littered with fruit, but most had passed their best. She saw a couple of ripe ones still clinging to their branches, and after a few attempts, she managed to jump high enough to reach them. She sat down in the dappled shade and demolished the fruits. The juices ran down her chin, but she didn't care. She hadn't eaten real food in weeks. After a short rest and a brief pee in the bushes, Flo continued along the road. She didn't know how much further she'd have to walk, but she knew that so long as she kept the mountains behind her, she'd be all right. By mid-morning, Flo had given up wiping the sweat from her brow, surrendering her eyes to the stinging. She wanted to rest, but knew that the heat would only get worse as the day wore on. Besides, her parents would have surely woken up by now and discovered she had gone. Would they come looking for her? Would they be brave enough? Could they be brave enough? Flo pressed on, the trees thinning until there was nothing besides a few fragrant shrubs and yellowed grass. She grabbed a handful of thyme and rubbed it with her fingers, the sharp scent cutting through the dry air. Her eyes widened when she noticed the view ahead of her. "There it is," she said, running a hand through her hair, which was now thick and greasy. In front of her, not half a mile away, was the sparkling waters of the Mediterranean Sea. "Eat that, Duke of Edinburgh," she said, and laughed. In the distance, she could make out a small fishing village, with its rocky pier and shallow sandy beach. There were no boats at the pier, nor any out at sea. There were no planes in the sky, either. It was all so eerie. Flo had arrived in Crete less than 2 months ago. She'd been brimming with excitement for her first holiday abroad. But now, after everything that had happened, it seemed like a distant memory. She paused for a moment, her gaze drifting to a tiny island not far from the shore. It was too small to be inhabited by people, but she could see specks of birds circling above. She wondered if it was possible to swim to the island. Back in school, she'd earned her 200-meter badge, which she was quite proud of, though this distance looked at least twice that. Pulling herself away from the view, she followed the road. It twisted and turned and descended toward the town. And eventually, the surface transitioned from gravel to tarmac. The first building Flo came across was a row of holiday villas, each a different pastel color. She approached one of them, standing on her tiptoes so she could see over the stone wall and into the garden. There was a swimming pool, but the water was murky green. A body floated face down in the center. She wandered over to the next villa, which didn't have a wall, and was relieved to find that the swimming pool was empty. Unfortunately, the sunbed next to it was not. A woman lay flat on the bed, her arms dangling on either side. She wore a black bikini, and her spilled guts glistened in the sunlight, festering and dissected by the feral cats. Flo turned to leave, but after a few paces, her morbid curiosity got the better of her. She glanced back and stiffened. The woman was sitting bolt upright. Flo swallowed hard and hurried along the road. Behind her, she heard a low gurgle, wet and bubbling. The village was only a short walk from the villa. It had a central road that led directly to the seafront. Along the road were numerous shops that sold what her dad would call tourist tat. Trying her luck, Flo stepped into one of them at random. Inside, the air was thick and stale. Flo scanned the shelves, hoping for something, anything, edible. The place, however, had been ransacked. What was left had little use to her now. Fridge magnets, postcards, swimming goggles, ceramic figures, tourist guides offering the hidden gems of Crete, handcrafted wooden coasters and honey dippers. And there, right at the back of the store, perched high on the top shelf, stood a large jar of stuffed green olives. Flo didn't care much for olives, but it was not the time to be picky. She walked down the aisle toward the shelves and reached upward, but it was no good. She needed to get higher. She found an empty crate nearby. Using it as a step, she touched the base of the jar with her fingertips. It would have to do. She began to edge the jar when something stirred from somewhere inside the store. Flo turned her head, her eyes darting from aisle to aisle, searching for the source of the sound. Nothing. All right, she thought. Just grab the olives and get the hell out of here. She continued maneuvering the jar, inch by inch, until she could get her hands under it. Got it. She lowered the jar and tucked it safely under her arm. As she climbed down, her vision suddenly blurred. A million black flies swarming behind her eyelids. The ground seemed to shift beneath her feet, and the next thing she knew, she was lying flat on her back. Dazed, Flo tilted her head to one side, her gaze lingering on the smashed jar of olives beside her, the brine pooling across the floor. Something crunched over the glass. Flo snapped her head up and gasped. A slender, crooked figure was shuffling toward her, walking over the shards of glass. She was an elderly woman. Her skin was pale and torn like tissue paper. Her sunken eyes were a clouded gray and unblinking. Flo scrambled to her feet, scoring her palms on the broken glass as she stood, though she barely felt the pain. The woman inched closer. Her jaw hung open, her lips cracked and bloodless. A faint groan rose from her throat, like a rusted hinge. The old woman stood between Flo and the exit. Flo hesitated. Her eyes flickered between the woman and the doorway. She picked up the crate and shoved it into the elderly woman. The woman staggered back, arms flailing. Flo tossed the crate aside and made a break for the exit. She was almost there when the light from the doorway darkened. A hulking creature stepped into the store. It stood 6 feet tall, its chest and shoulders matted with hair. Blistered skin peeled away in leathery strips, scorched by the heat. The creature gave a deep, sickening groan as it lumbered toward Flo. Behind it, more zombies filtered in. 2, 3, 4. So many. Flo stepped backward, but slipped on a smear of sun cream, landing hard on the floor. She yelled in pain. She grabbed the shelves and pulled herself up, knocking over a stand of sunglasses that clattered to the floor. Flo spun around and froze. The elderly woman stood at the end of the aisle, blocking her path. "No," Flo whispered. A wave of hopelessness overwhelmed her. She pressed her back against the wall, her body trembling. The undead closed in. Flo squeezed her eyes shut, bracing herself, waiting for the inevitable. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4. She opened her eyes. The zombie, the big one, stood in front of her. The stench was suffocating. Flo held her breath, remaining completely still. She watched with confusion as it turned its back to her, looking down at where the sunglasses had landed. The others slowed too. Flo frowned. What was happening? She waved her hand in front of one of them. It didn't even flinch. They must have been attracted to the sound, Flo thought. They're not interested in me. Flo slipped past the mob. They looked almost as confused as Flo felt, and stepped out into the blinding sun. I'm invisible. For the next couple of hours, Flo embraced her newfound superpower. She raided the shops and managed to scavenge a box of honey-soaked pastry nests and 2 cans of Greek lemonade. She consumed the lot in one sitting before moving to other shops, trying on dresses and sun hats and expensive jewelry. She grew strangely accustomed to the zombies, now that they didn't seem to see her as a meal. When she grew tired, Flo headed to the beach. She laid a towel on an empty sunbed and sat down. A few zombies rested on nearby beds, cooking in the heat. Another was crawling across the sand. A cockroach scuttled across its back. A young boy, who looked to be of a similar age to Flo, laid flat on a paddle board that had washed up to shore. A little girl, just a toddler, sat upright in the shallow water. She was wearing 2 armbands, but one had deflated. The gentle waves kept pushing her over, but she sprung back up, a loose tooth, unsteady, but clinging into place. Flo kicked off her shoes and let her toes sink into the sand. She pulled out a bottle of sun lotion from her tote bag and applied it to her bare arms and legs, careful not to get it on the plaster covering her left ankle. She dried her hands on the towel, then pulled off the plaster. No need to hide it anymore. The bite mark had swollen since yesterday, but she could still make out the dental impression of the old man in her ankle. It reminded her of the clay impressions she'd had made for her braces a few months prior. She sighed, then laid back on the sunbed. It was stupid. She was stupid. She'd gone and gotten herself bitten and ruined everything. 2 swallows danced in the sky. Flo watched as they flew out to sea toward the island. Flo closed her eyes, her mind spinning. I had no choice. I had to run away. I couldn't let them see me like this. She tried to focus on the sounds. The fizz of the sea foam, the rise of the crickets, the chirp of the birds, the soft groans of the undead. Flo drifted to sleep. When Flo woke, the shadows were stretched long across the sand, and the sound of the crickets had died back. Flo glanced at her ankle. Her stomach twisted. Dark purple veins had formed around the wound. She traced them with trembling fingers, her chest tightening. "Not long now." "I'm sorry," Flo whispered, tears forming in her eyes. "I didn't mean for this to happen." She pulled the towel from under her and wrapped it over her shoulders. She hugged her knees to her chest, shivering despite the lingering warmth. Everything ached. Ached like it did when she'd had the COVID vaccine last autumn. She pictured herself as a zombie, imagining her eyes turning gray and wandering about aimlessly. She imagined seeing her parents and seeing the pain and horror on their faces when they recognized her. Then she imagined her younger brother, his eyes lighting up when he saw her, too young to understand. She reached out to him as if to hug him, but instead pulled him close and opened her mouth to bite. "No, stop it." Flo stood up, staggering to the water's edge. "I can't let that happen. I won't." She went over to the paddleboard. She tipped it, letting the body of the boy slip into the water. She climbed onto the board, her hands shaking as she picked up the paddle. The sea stretched out before her, painted in hues of pink and orange, and on the horizon was the island. She pushed off, letting the board drift from the shore. This was where she was meant to go all along. She knew this now. To the island. "It's going to be okay," she whispered to the waves. The island loomed ahead, its rocky cliffs sharp against the twilight sky. Gulls cried overhead, their calls echoing across the water. "I can't hurt them now." Henry was average in almost every measure of the word. He worked in a company that, like himself, was totally and completely ordinary. Nothing he did on a day-to-day basis mattered. And that was just the way he liked. All that changed, however, when he showed up to his office one day. He'd been there for a few hours at this point, mindlessly typing away at his keyboard, when a thought occurred to him. Why had it been so quiet? Now, usually, he was the first one to the office and quickly settled into his desk. He would close the door and get lost in a sea of numbers and words. Still, though, Henry would always hear some chatter from behind his door. Maybe the beep of the copier or the laugh of a joke. Never had it been utterly silent like this. Henry tried to get out of his mind. He tried to continue with his work. Henry continued typing. Usually, his work soothed Henry. But now, a growing sense of uneasiness filled him. Somehow, he knew that if he stopped working and dared to open his office door, everything he loved about his life would come to an end suddenly and horrifically. Henry continued typing. Henry knew that he couldn't keep mindlessly typing at his keyboard. So, he decided to get up and investigate what was happening. Henry continued typing. It appeared that Henry didn't want to follow the laid-out structure of the story. Perhaps, he thought, that if he kept typing and doing his work, all this wouldn't be happening. Ah, that's the spirit, Henry. Bravo. You figured it out. Well done. But seriously, don't you think it's time to face the inevitable and open the door? Henry continued typing. All right, you win, Henry. I'll leave you alone now and let you live out the rest of your life in ignorant bliss. Goodbye, Henry. Henry paused and stood up. He walked over to his door and opened it slowly. Henry couldn't pretend to keep working any longer. He walked over to his door and tossed the door open, as if to say, I don't fear the situation I am currently in. In fact, I am Henry, and I laugh in the face of danger. The door slammed against the wall and revealed an empty office. The brave protagonist decided to get to the bottom of this. Henry walked carefully out of his office. Then, he walked down a hallway and stopped at a set of stairs. The left set went up, and the right set went down. Upon coming to a set of stairs, Henry took the one on his left. Henry paused for a moment before heading down the right set of stairs. For some reason, beyond all common sense, Henry decided to take the stairs on the right. He surely knew that there was nothing at the bottom of those as he descended each step. After all, he'd been an employee at the company for, I don't honestly know how long. My, how embarrassing. Well, let's say longer than a year and less than 100 years. Yes, I'm quite happy we've come to an agreement. Henry reached the bottom of the stairs. He looked around and saw nothing there except for a bucket. He walked over and picked up the bucket, then headed back up the stairs. Ah, yes, the bucket. Quite a crucial piece of the story. I'm glad you spent all that time walking to the bottom of the stairs for a bucket. Henry made his way to the original fork in the stairs and went up this time. An eerie feeling began to creep into Henry. He hoped that maybe he had just missed a memo and everyone was in an early morning meeting. They were rare, but did happen from time to time. Once he reached the top of the stairs, he walked through an open door and into the meeting room. Henry clutched at the bucket dearly. The bucket was a soothing presence for Henry and comforted him. He needed every bit of comfort he could manage because the meeting room was completely empty. Not a sign of life except for half a box of donuts from the day before. Henry quickly walked through the room and into the hallway. After a short while, he came to 3 closed doors. On the left was a red door. In the middle was a purple door. On the right was a green door with a sign on the front that read, "Do not enter unless you wish to be fired." Henry knew he should enter the door on the right because that was his boss's office. If someone knew what was happening, it would be his boss. He would have to risk the chance of being fired. Henry walked over to the red door and turned the handle. He pulled on the door. It rattled, but didn't open. Without a second doubt, Henry knew he should go his boss's office. So he entered the door on his right, the green door. Henry walked over to the purple door and turned the handle, then pulled on the door. It rattled, but didn't open. Ahem. Perhaps I wasn't clear. Henry walked over to the green door and walked inside his boss's office. Does nobody have respect for a good story anymore? It's a good thing I remembered to lock those doors. Henry opened the green door and walked inside. When Henry walked inside his boss's office, to no one's surprise, it was empty. There was nothing but a solid wood desk and huge bookcases on each side. At that moment, Henry resigned himself to a life of solitude. He was sure that he was going to spend the rest of his miserable life in complete and utter isolation. And he was okay with that. Come to think of it, he never really liked having his co-workers around, did he? Sure, he didn't hate the small talk or the company meetings, but he was certain he could come to terms with being without. It may even allow him to focus more completely on his work. Then, a horrible thought crossed his mind. How would he work if there was no one to send his completed documents to? Truly a tough one. That's it. Henry will be the worker and the boss. Yes, that's genius. This way, he can continue to play out his mundane life and find some semblance of happiness. Well, I guess that's it then. Henry spent the rest of his time working away at his desk, while occasionally walking up the stairs and approving all his glorious work. Henry really was a superb and hard-working employee. Henry still stood in his boss's office. He stared at a big red button that said, "Do not touch," in big letters. He walked over to it and pressed it. Oh, Henry, what did you think would happen when you pressed the button? Setting aside the obvious fact that it was clearly stated for you not to touch, did you think that by pressing the button, you could fight against the system? Fight against your fate? Fight against me? Ha ha ha. I applaud your resilience, Henry. Truly. Henry pressed the button again. Okay. This is starting to get pathetic now, Henry. How about you just head back to your office, and we'll go with the ending I already planned out for you. I know you, Henry. I know that you need someone to tell you what to do, and that without that, you can't function. So, I am telling you now, Henry, to turn around and go to your office and get back to work. Henry pressed the button again. The building shook, and Henry had to brace himself to avoid falling over. Henry, why did you do that? Didn't I just give you a direct order? If you press that button again, Henry pressed the button again. The building shook more violently this time. It shook until Henry felt like he might pass out. Then it all stopped at once. Henry waited. Bucket firmly in hand for a long time in that office. Henry waited until he felt like it was long enough. Finally, there was no one telling him what he should think or how he should act. It was a freeing sensation, but also a deeply disturbing one. Perhaps he would have been better off blindly listening to that voice, but it was too late to second-guess himself now. So he turned around and headed back to his office. Henry looked down at his watch. Almost time for lunch. The shadows beneath, I always had an irrational fear of the dark. Not in the typical sense, where shadows seemed to slither and stretch out from the corners of my room at night, but in the more insidious way, where the darkness crept into my mind. It was a quiet terror, the feeling that something was watching, waiting for me to slip. But lately, that fear had intensified. I could no longer tell where the line between reality and nightmare began to blur. It started innocuously enough. Strange dreams, vivid and unsettling. They were always the same. A vast, endless hallway with doors lining the walls, each leading to a room I had never seen. But the worst part was the figure at the end of the hall. It was always the same faceless shadow. A person, but not a person. Its form indistinguishable from the pitch-black night surrounding it. One night, it was different. I woke up drenched in sweat, my heart pounding in my chest. The hallway from my dream stretched out before me, just like in my sleep. Only now, it felt real. The floor was cold under my bare feet, the air heavy with the scent of mildew. I froze, knowing that something was wrong, but unable to move. My eyes darted around the familiar room that now felt alien. My instinct screamed at me to run. But where? To hide from what? Suddenly, a noise broke the silence. A creak from the far end of the hallway. The figure had moved closer. My breath hitched as I saw it again, standing at the far end, a dark silhouette against the backdrop of the hallway's dim glow. No matter how many times I tried to look away, the shape seemed to grow, inch by inch, its presence more overwhelming. I tried to scream, but no sound came. Panic surged as I tried to turn back to my room, but my legs wouldn't obey. Each step I took towards the hallway was heavier than the last, as if the darkness was pulling me in, urging me closer to the shadow. Then, for a split second, I saw its face, or rather, the absence of it. Where eyes should have been, there was only an empty, swirling void, a vortex of my worst memories. All the faces, all the fears I had ever tried to bury resurfaced in that hollow, unblinking stare. In that moment, I understood. The figure wasn't some external terror. It was the manifestation of all the things I feared about myself. My fear was me. I was something that needed to be feared. But why? Why do I need to be afraid of myself? And then, in the middle of my terror, something shifted. I began to understand that the nightmare wasn't about running, hiding, or avoiding the figure. It was about confronting it, acknowledging what it represented. I had lived my life trying to hide myself, my true self, the real me. But the more I avoided, the more it controlled me. The shadow wasn't just a fear. It was a reflection of my own unresolved past that I needed to confront, or I needed to remember something that explained everything, explained why I was different. Taking a deep breath, I did the one thing I had never dared to do. I approached the figure. As I walked towards it, the air thickened, the darkness pressing in on all sides. But I kept going. The closer I got, the less the shadow seemed to loom. The face, or what should have been a face, began to soften, its edges blurring, until it was just a shadow once again. No more real than the fears I had allowed to dominate my life. My heart still raced, but there was a strange sense of clarity. I wasn't running anymore. I wasn't hiding. I had confronted the darkest part of myself and survived. And now I remembered. I remembered everything. The darkness around me began to recede, the hallway dissolving into nothing. I was back in my room, sitting up in bed, the morning light creeping in through the blinds. My breathing was steady now, my mind clear. For the first time in years, the shadows no longer seemed so terrifying, for I had conquered it. The only thing that ever got anything out of me, because now I knew. Now I remembered the truth about who I am, the monster that I carried within me. It didn't want to stay buried anymore. It was clawing through my skin to let loose. I had controlled it my whole life. It was time everyone felt what I felt. Everyone had to be afraid of my fear. Everyone deserved to face my fear. Everyone should fear me for who I am. I sat on the edge of my bed, the warmth of the morning sun pressing through the curtains. My mind still buzzed with the after effects of the nightmare. No, not a nightmare, I corrected myself, but a revelation. It wasn't something I could easily shake off. The fear of the dark, the shadow that had haunted me for so long, still lingered in the corners of my mind. But now there was something different, a strange sense of power, knowing the truth. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the world beyond. The trees swayed in the breeze, and the sky was clear, but a lingering thought gnawed at me. My phone buzzed, snapping me out of my thoughts. It was a text from my best friend, Mia. "Hey, how are you today? You seemed off last night. Wanna talk?" Oh, so now she wants to talk, is it? With a deep breath, I typed a reply. "I had a strange dream last night. I think it was more than just a dream, though. Something shifted in me." Mia's reply came almost instantly. "That sounds intense. Want to meet up? You can tell me about it." I felt annoyed, but then I typed, "Let's meet at the cafe later." Mia was my best friend, but it always felt like she always only reached out when she wanted something. I had always been good at reading people. I knew Mia was selfish, but I always hanged out with her because she was also one of the most popular girls in college, which gave my life normalcy. I never understood any emotion. I just mimicked everything I saw. I always knew something was different about me, but today I knew why. As I prepared for the day, I couldn't shake the sense that something had changed within me. The shadow I had confronted might have vanished for now, but it had left a trace that was now pushing me to look deeper inside myself, to explore what was beneath the surface. Later that afternoon, I arrived at the cafe. Mia was already there, sipping a cappuccino and scanning her phone. She looked up when I entered, her face lighting up with a welcoming, fake smile. I was now sure that Mia needed something. The strength needed to suppress the urge to eye roll was tiring. Sometimes I wondered, why do I even bother? I took a seat across from her, the comforting hum of the cafe's atmosphere easing my nerves. I glanced around the cafe. It's strange, really, how people go on with their lives, oblivious to the fact that they're just players in a game I'm not really interested in. They feel things, emotions like guilt or joy or sadness. They let these things rule them. But not me. I don't let emotions get in the way. They're distractions. Why should I feel anything when I can see things so clearly? Take today, for example. I'm sitting across Mia at a cafe, and she's talking about her day. Something trivial, like how her boyfriend Cole was rude, or how her coffee wasn't as hot as she'd wanted it. I can see her eyes light up when she talks, how she leans in slightly, waiting for my response. She thinks I'm listening, that I care, but I don't. The words she's saying don't matter. The only thing that matters is how she behaves, how I react to things she says, how she trusts me, how she looks at me like I'm someone worth sharing her thoughts with. I give my just enough attention to keep her interested. That's all I need. I can tell what she's going to say next without even having to think about it. People are predictable. They are creatures of habit. Emotions are just their patterns, their responses to external stimuli. They don't make them special. They're just machines that respond to certain things, like I do. The difference is, I don't get tangled in those responses. They're useful, though. Understanding them, manipulating them, it's like a game of chess. You move them around until they do what you want. She said that we could talk about my dream. But here we are, talking about how awful of a boyfriend Cole is. I just hope she doesn't cry. Because today, I don't think I can put up with this anymore. Cole just yelled at her for not deleting an Instagram post he didn't like. He never understood her. She says it like it matters. The vulnerability in her voice, that little crack that betrays the illusion of control. It's almost amusing. People talk about their wounds like they're sacred, like they're somehow beyond reproach. But what they don't realize is that they're just vulnerabilities. And if you're smart, you can use them. I watch her carefully, noting the way her hand shakes slightly as she stirs her drink. She's nervous now, about something. I nod, pretending to care, like I'm reflecting on what she said. I don't care about her boyfriend or her pain. I care about what makes her tick, how I can twist her perceptions just enough to get what I want. It's not about hurting her, not necessarily. It's about control, power, and in this world, people give up their power so easily. They open up to you, they trust you, and once they do, they're mine. Her phone vibrates. She picks it up, looks at it first with anger, then confusion, then sadness. I don't need to wonder what it is about. She will tell me about it eventually. She always does. She smiles, reassured. She thinks I understand her, thinks I'm someone she can confide in. She's wrong. I finished my drink. Her face lit up with the self-satisfaction of someone who feels understood, who's shared their deepest secrets with someone they think cares. Do you have a crush on Cole? She asks suddenly, her expression a mixture of hurt and anger. Now, where was this coming from? Sometimes people do throw a curveball at you. But if you are someone like me, you always know how to dodge it. What? No, I said, trying to convey an emotion that I wasn't feeling. She stares at me, trying to read me. Unlike me, she wasn't good at reading people. Hence, she was in a relationship with an idiot like Cole. He was hot, all right. He had a handsome face, body that girls went mad over, and that bad boy attitude that had girls dropping like flies all over the campus. Also, he was nutty as a fruitcake. He had a personality of an Adidas sandal. She thinks that staring at me intently may intimidate me into telling her something. I just don't care about her or her pathetic boyfriend anymore. It seemed like a staring contest between us. She doesn't know that I've already moved on. I've already seen her for what she is. Predictable, simple, and just another piece on the board. I've won, and she hasn't even realized it. Cole and I had a fight yesterday. You know about the Instagram post I told you about? Then he went on saying about how smashing hot you are. Brad and Nate agreed with him. I got a little mad. I mean, I know you are hot, but please, why does he care when he is dating like the hottest girl on the campus? She said, looking at me to affirm her belief. I just stared back because I don't even care anymore. She just continued after a minute of reassuring herself about her hotness. Cole left after that, but Nate stayed back to see if I was all right. And then he said that Cole has been getting a little obsessed with you lately, ever since he came back from visiting his sister's family at Jacksonville. Now this is interesting. Jacksonville is where I was born, also the place where it all began. Now what is that steroid-filled Adidas sandal up to? Looks like he isn't as much nutty. I just smiled at her. Oh, come on, girl. I wouldn't even talk to Cole. You know me. I would never betray my bestie for another man. You know sisters before meisters. He will never come between us. In fact, he will never hurt you again. I said, smiling, knowing that the steroid-filled balloon needs to be popped. Mia is too important for my normal image, as much as annoying she is. She is an important piece in my chessboard. I still had a year left in college, after all. Satisfied, she gets up to leave, and I watch her walk away. She's happy, content. She thinks we've shared something meaningful. That's the beauty of it. The beauty of not caring. People will always be eager to give you what they think you want. They'll hand over their trust, their secrets, their love, if you know how to ask for it, if you know how to play the game. I look out the window, the sunlight spilling through the glass. The shadows outside, stretched long and dark across the street, no longer seemed as menacing. The shadow hadn't vanished entirely, but it didn't need to. It was part of my story, part of what made me who I am. And by facing it, I had taken control over my own narrative. As I sat there thinking, I felt a sense of clarity I hadn't experienced before. There was still work to do, still parts of myself to uncover and accept. But I wasn't afraid to keep moving forward. After all, the worst of it, the part that had kept me locked in fear, was already behind me. My phone vibrated. Hey, it was a text from Cole. I called him. I just couldn't text him, for I already knew everything. I asked him to meet me at the Lover's Cliff. It was just a secluded cliff on the top where all of them went to make out. Cole, the steroid-fueled cupcake, thought I asked him to meet there because I wanted to make out. I drove and waited for him there. I was scared. Not because he was walking slowly towards me and looking at me like a predator looking at his prey, but because I knew the truth. I was the big bad wolf, and he was just the shepherd who cried wolf. I slowly and seductively walked towards him. Licking my lips, I watched him follow my action. "I have a secret?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper, as if it were a secret in itself. "Yes," he said, smiling and reaching in front of me. "And you know about it?" I asked, trying to look serious and running my nails slowly along his chest and going around his neck. "Yes," he said, smirking and holding my waist. I shivered a little as his fingers made exotic patterns on the exposed skin of my waist. I pulled him closer to my face by his neck and played with his soft hair. "And this secret is what?" I whispered slowly, our lips almost touching. "You don't know about it yet," he said, looking at my lips with lustful eyes. "Let me get this straight. I have a secret that I don't know about, but you know about it?" I kissed him, giving him exactly what he wanted. The kiss was slow at first, then it turned to a battle for domination. He thinks he knows me. He believes he knows my secret. I let him get his way for a few seconds, and then pulled his hair, which made him open his mouth, and I let my tongue in to show him how it's done. He didn't mind, really. Two can play the game. He was about to grab my ass when suddenly I pushed him, and down he fell. "I am sorry. You knew my secret. You had to die. Nothing personal, really. For what it's worth, you were a good kisser," I shouted, looking down the cliff at his falling figure, my hair flowing back and laughing maniacally. Dead girl walking. Nobody knows that I've been bit. Nobody can know. They'll kill me, and I wouldn't blame them. I wouldn't feel betrayed if my own sister put a gun to my head and pulled the trigger if she found out. I would do the same, because it is the right thing to do, the safe thing to do. So I'm biding my time. It may be selfish what I'm doing, but in this apocalyptic world, it's every man for himself, or every woman, in my case. Hurry up, Nevada. Tristan wants those potatoes by yesterday. We're having a feast. I snap out of my thoughts and go back to peeling the last potato. I'm basically done. Here, take them. She picks up the metal bowl and walks out of the house. All the makeshift houses were built in a big circle after the apocalypse, so we're all like one big family. Our house isn't much. A run-down cabin, really, in the middle of a field that's in the center of the great woods. That's where I was bit. It was my fault, but I just couldn't help myself. Thomas. The very thought of him makes my eyes tear up and makes me reach for my locket. A picture of the two of us on our 2-year anniversary inside. He was one of the first to turn. I visited him often, but I never crossed the electric fence. I sang to him. I talked to him, sure that he was listening. Until one day, I couldn't help myself. 3 days ago, I turned the fence off for a split second in the middle of the night, and I climbed over. "I've missed you," I had told him, and he looked at me with pure love until he grabbed me by my wrist and then my waist. "Thomas!" I screamed, but he never responded. He threw me to the ground, and I realized that he wasn't looking at me with love. He looked at me with hunger, with fury, and he bit me. I screamed and screamed until he let me go, but not before tearing a piece of my midsection out. He felt pity, and he ran. I crawled back through the fence, and I turned it back on. I couldn't get help, so I stitched it up myself. I wrapped it in bandages and threw the bloody shirt far over the fence. I brush my fingers past the stitches as I remember. I wince at the pain. My plan is to wait until the last moment. Then, in the middle of the night, like so many other times, I'll sneak off to the fence. But this time, I'll go over and I won't come back. It's best this way. Nobody has to suffer. They won't kill me or throw me to the zombies before I'm ready. My sister will think I was eaten by a bear. Or maybe they'll tell her that I got drunk and fell off a cliff. She wouldn't be surprised. My lips have touched more whiskey than water since Thomas turned. I walk out of the house and towards the crowd of people gathering in the center of the house circle. A big table is in the very center. I go up to Evangeline, my sister, who is setting up the tables. "Why the big celebration?" She looks up from the utensils and napkins. "He wants to celebrate nobody being infected in the last year." She hesitates. Thomas marks the last person bitten. My eye twitches, but Eva doesn't seem to notice. I walk away from her without another word. I cannot hurt them. I cannot hurt Eva like this. I will leave tonight, after the feast, so I can have one last goodbye. I go back inside our house and get out my best outfit, the only dress that I had left, and my bright diamond heels, the most expensive thing I still had. My mother and father had gifted them to me before they were killed. Not by zombies, by a human, long before the apocalypse even started. I've never worn them to try and preserve them, just in case the apocalypse ever ended. I had a false hope that someday things would be normal again, and I would graduate or have my wedding in diamond heels. But I messed everything up. Eva will get my heels. She's begged for them for years, but I'm wearing them to the feast. Night falls quickly, and the people have put torches up next to every house, and at the corner of the feasting table, I serve myself a tall glass of liquor. I don't want to feel anything when the zombies take me. I can see the townspeople eyeing me and then staring at my drink. Everybody in town knows about me. The girl that used to have the kindest eyes and a bubbling personality. The girl whose eyes have lost their shimmer, whose soul has turned bitter. The girl who kept to herself inside her house and plugged her ears at every town gathering. Until now. "It's good to see you, Nevada," Tristan says from behind me. I turn my head around and smile at him. "Yes, it is. It's a lovely night that you've arranged for the town." He laughs. "It's what I do best, sweets." I smile at that, my nickname since I was a little girl. I'll miss Tristan. He walks over to greet a couple that just approached the table. I look around the field to see happy people, dancing and singing, drinking, eating, and cheering. Oh God, what am I still doing here? It's not just my bite that could infect them. It's me. I've been infecting the town, my sister, and Tristan. I don't fit here anymore. I suck up their happiness. I don't belong. I have to leave right now. I quickly find Eva and ask her to walk with me. "What's wrong, Nevada?" I flash my most convincing smile at her. "Nothing. Just wanted to spend some time with you." She looks at her feet. "I love you. You know that, right, kid?" I ask her. She looks up at me and smiles. "I love you too, no matter what." She hugged me tightly, the first hug she had given me in over a year, and I hugged her back. "Listen, Ava," I started. "I'm sorry for not being there for her skin. It smells delicious. Her eyes, they're so pretty. I want to know what they would look like in between my teeth." And I bite her, and a couple drops of blood flow from her cheek and into my mouth. I greedily gulp it down, and I crave more. I want to hurt her. I have to hurt her. So I bite deeper, and then she starts to scream. It's an agonizing and ear-piercing scream. I am startled by the scream, and I jump back. And the split second is all I needed to snap out of it. No. No, no. It was never supposed to be like this. I wasn't supposed to hurt her. I run to get help, spitting her blood out of my mouth and wiping my face with my sleeve. I run as fast as I can. "Tristan!" I scream. "Please! Anybody!" I need them to kill me, or to help Eva, if they can. Tristan looks up and walks towards me. A crowd gathers around him, muttering, afraid. "What is it, Nevada?" he asks, obviously agitated. Suddenly the crowd behind him gasps, and Tristan whips his gun out from its holster. I prepare to be shot, but quickly realize he isn't pointing it at me. His gun is pointed at Eva. She is slowly crawling towards us, blood streaming down her face, and an obvious bite marks her cheek. "No, don't shoot her," I scream and try to lunge towards Tristan. "She's infected," he says as he shoves me off. Eva looks up at me, hurt. There is agony and fear in her eyes, but the thing that she feels most is clear: betrayal. Tristan pulls the trigger. Once, twice, and a final time. I fall to the ground beside her. Bullet holes pierce her small body. She's dead. She hasn't turned yet, but they killed her. She's dead forever. What have I done? Tristan and another man drag me off of her, and Tristan pulls me into a tight hug, forcing me to face away from her body. But I feel no guilt anymore. I want to rip Tristan's flesh off of his bones. I want to taste his tendons, his blood. I push away from him. I can't hurt another person. "Shoot me, Tristan." He looks at me perplexed. "What? No, I'm not going to shoot you. You can't ask me to take your life." I look up at him. No tears in my eyes, no shame, only hunger and rage. "I bit her, so shoot me too." Tristan raises his gun again, but hesitates. I'm already turned. It won't kill me. I slide my heels off and place them in the grass. The crowd follows my every move. Bury Evangeline in these. I sit in the grass and nod at Tristan, instructing him to pull the trigger. His hand shakes as he walks towards me, pressing his gun to my temple. "Goodbye, Nevada," he says, forcing a smile. But I can see his eyes are full of tears. I look straight into his eyes, and his mention of my name, not my nickname, my old life, snaps me back to reality. I sob, big and ugly sobs, and I only cry harder at the sight of my dead sister. "I don't want to be shot," I shout. But Tristan doesn't move his gun. "I know. Just close your eyes and don't think about it." I hear a sob creeping into his throat, so I just do as he says. I shut my eyes and wring my hands together. "Say hello to Thomas for me, sweets," he whispers in my ear, and everything goes quiet. I wake up to birds chirping, wind blowing through the trees, and the sight of my Thomas. "Thomas!" I jump up, but I feel a pounding headache. I put my hand to my forehead and feel a steady stream of blood coming from a bullet. But I don't care. Thomas is here. He holds my face. "I've missed you, love." The gray sensitive. Theme warning: violence, gore, horror, suicide, ideation. It's a hole in the ground. Newspaper, leaves, and cardboard. Paracord to the truck behind. Pitfall, the shuffling is sporadic. moments of silence. Then the stomach growls. The creature shuffles. It's a rabbit. An albino. Comes out like an old magician's hat. No fight. I pull it close to my face. Can feel its breath. Its heart beats quick. It doesn't fight. Why? No broken limbs. No signs of tears. The stomach growls. Look in its eyes. Beady. Red. I sigh, set it down. Doesn't run. Sniffs the air. Steps around. Timid. Walks back to the pitfall. Flops inside. Shuffles. Stops. I want to laugh, but the forest is quiet. No wind. Once a concrete jungle. Shopping malls, cars, people. Now it belongs to the green. What isn't claimed by the green is claimed by the gray. And the gray is quiet. It squeaks. I pick it up again. Doesn't fight. Set it down. Block the path to the pitfall with boot. It walks around a bit. It's lost, alone. No instincts to live. Strange. Branch snaps behind me. Big branch. Reach for gun. Black. Flash. Big flash. Bang. Birds fly away. Fluttering wings echo amongst the concrete and trees. Rabbits gone. Slight rustling in the distance. It stops. Too small for bear. Must be bobcat. Agile, quick. There's blood spray on the road. Twisted pattern against overgrowth. I follow it. I am the apex. I am what's left. I am man. Follow for a mile. Blood drippings and shuffled leaves leads to real forest. Dense. No concrete. The gray has touched these trees. Now it rots with life. The coating is amalgamated. All is one, and one is all. The gray spreads slowly. That is its way. Leaves touch where they shouldn't. They grow into each other until two become one, until 100 becomes one, until all is gray. The trail of the beast walks the line between life and fake life, where the earth is still brown, the ground's too dry to give a distinct print. Where the world is gray, the blood loses its color and feeds the machine. The sun is setting. The gray will seed to the earth. Still, it grows. The whole of it, the lot of it, pushing over the trail, seeping into the earth, must follow the color until there is none left. Dusk has set. When the green is quiet, the gray may speak. The gray's owls hoot their calls, distorted cries echoing amongst itself. Mockery. They call to me from the canopy. Hoot, where do you go? I don't answer the gray. It's all lies. Hoot, why do you go? I don't answer. Derek, more human this time. My love, don't stop. We miss you. I stop and look into the gray. It glows at night, coding stolen from fireflies. It hums and haws with energy. Colors, shifting blue, green, orange, where it wills. The gray squelches against itself, tearing, ripping, like the sound of flesh in the mouth of a bear. Trees cracking under pressure that builds until it snaps. It tears itself to breed. A silhouette stands deep in the gray. It hides behind a tree. Gnawed silver fingers stretched around the bark of more gray. Derek, far more human than before, I pull out the gun. Is it you? Female. Familiar. I pull back the hammer. Derek, please. I put the barrel to my temple. The gray recoils. Low. Guttural hiss. Vibrating through the silver mass. The apparition melts into itself, seeping back into the gray like water into sand. I sigh, put down the gun, pull out the torch, follow the trail, ignore the memories. The trail remains. The blood falls more into the green. If it's a cat, it's big. It's eaten well. There's a river nearby. Fresh water. Lips are dry. Cracked. Hands, too. The trail leads to the sound of water. Moonlight sparkles through the canopy of leaves. The beast has taken me to a pond. Frogs hop amongst lily pads. Ribbit. Stomach growls. Make a gig out of branches and twine. Spear 3. Cut back of necks. Peel off skin. Use knife to cut through feet and hips. Legs are good. Moonlight is good. Dump in salt water. Start a fire. Burn the impurities. Feast beneath the stars. The tune of water is nice. It does not squelch. It does not cry. It simply flows. Night has seeped in. The beast will tire. Now is the time. Pack up supplies. Throw discarded frog bits to where the gray will come. Let it feast on the dead instead. Cross the river. Find trail. Blood patterns are more frequent. Not far. Put torch on shoulder. Count bullets. 4. Holster gun with strap loose. Draw spear. Listen. Leaves, wind, wine. The wine is not a cat. Draw nearer to animal. Blood pools in thick puddles. Wine is frequent. The beast is hurt enough to not be alarmed by the light. Keep it on. Something is tearing flesh. Sounds like the gray, but raw. It's chewing. Hide in bush. Close to the beast. Very close. The beast is not alarmed. Not by the light. Not by footsteps. Not by me. I face the beast beneath the light of my torch. The beast is not a cat. It's a dog. Great Dane. Mouth stained with blood. Bullet hit right flank. Bleeding under the moon. Alive. Barely. The squelching sound continues. Not the dog. Shine light towards it. Its eyes catch the light, but it does not move. It holds the remains of the white rabbit in its dark and thin fingers. Blood shines off the skin around the mouth, takes the rabbit, and bites into the guts raw. Its beady eyes look at me, silent intrigue. I kneel to its level. It watches me without concern or care. A child, a human child. I rush to him. The dog growls and stands on its wounded leg. I raise my hands and cede. The dog rests and resumes its whines, not taking its eyes off me. There is no sign of the gray on the child. There is no sign of gray on the dog. Both are younger than the gray. Take off rucksack. Gather firewood. Build small fire. Child watches in awe. Dog is unbothered. Offer small berries to child. It smiles and takes them with bloodied hands. The child eats until it cannot and falls asleep. The dog rests where it lay. I take the rabbit and cut it to pieces. Cooking what's left, eating little, and saving the rest, I curl next to the fire and let sleep take me. The dog's barks startle me awake. Frequent yaps at something behind me. The child has taken my spear and points it behind me. The sun is overhead. I have slept too long. Twist in place. The gray surrounds me. Silver apparitions stand above, shaped like humans, features like humans, but only gray. The dog barks more frequently. The child is near to tears, screaming. The gray has claimed my leg. Its crawl is slow. I thrust my leg free from the mold, but the gray has seeped into my skin. The child screams again, jabbing at the apparitions. It connects with one, but the apparition holds the spear tightly and pulls the child in. Don't think. Jump at apparition. Push child away. Apparition swallows me, wrapping my skin. Reach for gun. Bring to head. Bang. Nothing. Still here. Missed. Apparition pulls hand down. Kicks gun to the green to the child. The child stares at me. Nod to gun. Do it. First words I have uttered in years. Do it. The gray brings me to my knees. Apparitions all around. Touching, feeling, taking me. The mold crawls slow. Points of contact multiplying. Do it! The child picks up the gun and points it at me. Relief. I don't fight anymore, but the child does. Its hands tremble. The child's eyes are teary. It has not known me. Still, it weeps. I smile. It's okay. It's okay, little one. Let it happen. Bang! The tainted wing, heaven, appeared to me as a realm of endless light. A shimmering sky of golden amber, merging seamlessly into liquid blues. The feeling surrounding me was one of tranquility and unshakable joy, where time was irrelevant. and every breath irrepressible love. I remember the moment I descended from my sanctuary, plunging through the ether toward the fractured world below. It was within the void that I first encountered the presence of something aberrant. The journey between realms was meant to be swift, a seamless passage through the celestial streams. But as I soared, the path dimmed with a malevolent blackness, and the fabric of the space rippled with evil. Through the growing shadows came a terrifying, rasping whisper. "You are not welcome here, Herald. Turn back, or risk being unmade." I did not answer. I would not allow the darkness to divert me from my task. Yet, as I pressed forward, a figure emerged from the darkness, towering and twisted, its wings black as coal, and eyes flaming with a scorching crimson light. "You dare enter my domain?" it roared. "Your light has no place here." My grip tightened on the blade of light, meeting the creature's fiery gaze. "I go where I am commanded. No evil or darkness shall detain me." It laughed a guttural sound. "Such arrogance. Do you think your Lord's favor shields you from that which dwells below? I was once encompassed in light, entrusted with glory. But now I am free from the bonds of servitude." "Your freedom is a shackle," I replied, my blade igniting brighter. "Your pride cannot comprehend the absolute wholeness within the light." The creature snarled. "Then let me show you the cost of your so-called light." Before I could react, it lunged. The collision sent shockwaves through the void, and I felt the force of its hatred battering against my essence. We fought, our wings entangling in a deadly dance. My blade of light clashed when meeting its talons, each strike sending sparks of celestial energy cascading into the darkness. But the creature was stronger than I had anticipated. With every blow, I felt my light dimming. "You cannot win here," it hissed, talons scraping against my blade. "Every moment you remain, your light dims." "Our light dims," I countered, driving my blade forward, narrowly missing his scarlet eyes. "When we cease to fight for the light." The clash intensified, a deadly dance of wings and steel. "You will fall, just as I did," it sneered, crimson eyes glowing brighter. "Even the brightest stars burn out." I steadied myself, summoning strength. "Stars may burn out," I said, with a voice that belied my weakness. "But their light endures for eternity. And so will mine." With a cry reverberating into the ether, I surged forward, blade blazing. The creature clawed at me, its touch searing with poison. Black veins spread across my arm where it struck, its inky black substance sinking deep into my being. "You are already mine," it hissed, its voice dripping with malice. "Even if you flee, you will carry me within you." An unfamiliar panic surged through me, clawing at the edges of my resolve. Refusing to succumb, I channeled my strength into a singular strike. My blade erupted in a brilliant burst of light, forcing the creature to recoil, its twisted form retreating into the engulfing shadows. Without waiting to see if it would pursue, I fled, my wings straining against the weight of the infection. The void was no longer a passage, but a battlefield, the very fabric of it forbidding and hostile. Behind me, I could hear the fallen one giving chase, its laughter a cruel mockery. By the time I broke through the veil and into the mortal realm, I was not the archangel I had been. The corruption had spread, tainting my wings and dimming my light. Earth was a war zone where the remnants of humanity fought desperately to preserve their world. The skies, encased with blackened clouds, rained ash and fire. The ground a scarred wasteland, littered with the ruins of cities and the skeletal remnants of forests. Machines of war, titanic constructs of iron and fire, roamed the bleak landscape, their mechanical limbs crushing anything in their path. The war began with countries battling over resources, then escalated into sinister desolation as biochemical weapons ravaged entire populations, leaving cities barren and eerily silent. The land was poisoned, the soil blackened, and the rivers ran thick with a dark sludge. Yet even worse were the abominations, part machine, part flesh. Their forms were grotesque, with jagged metallic claws and eyes an unnatural orange. These soldiers were relentless in hunting down any survivors, driven by malevolent intelligence. They tore through buildings and barricades and sniffed out even the faintest trace of human life. These were the horrors Birgitta was hiding from. The abandoned church, where she had taken refuge, was barely holding together, its walls marred by holes, its roof sagging under the weight of collapse. She had barricaded the doors with broken pews in a futile attempt to keep out the beasts. "Mama," her son whispered, "will the monsters find us?" Birgitta knelt beside him, her hands steady despite the terror gnawing at her. "Nay, Elskling," she whispered quietly, brushing a lock of golden hair from his forehead. "We're safe here, I promise." But even as she spoke, distant explosions shook the fragile walls of the church. Birgitta closed her eyes, pleading silently with an unseen God. "Please," she whispered, her voice breaking. "If there is anything left of mercy in this world, protect my children." I found her in a hollowed-out church, her prayer guiding me through the chaos. The woman knelt before an altar, her children huddled close. A boy, no older than 5, clung to his sister, barely a toddler, who lay nestled near him on a blanket. Her voice was rich and warm as she hummed to them, trying to soothe their fears. The echo of my footsteps on the stone betrayed my approach. Her head jerked up, eyes flashing with fear and defiance. One hand gripped a tarnished knife, while the other wrapped protectively around her children. Her long blonde hair, tangled and unkempt, framed her face like a wild halo amidst the grime and chaos. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice hostile and raw. "A messenger," I replied, my voice strained. The poison had reached my throat, turning my words ragged, as though spoken through a veil of splintered glass. "Do not be afraid." "Afraid? You think I fear you more than what's out there?" She gestured to the collapsing walls, where the thunder of the ravaging war rattled the silence. "Not me," I said softly. "You've prayed for hope, and I've been sent to you to deliver it." Her laugh was bitter. "Hope? What hope is left? We're starving, freezing. My husband's gone, and the monsters will find us soon enough." Her hands moved to draw her children closer. "What hope can you possibly bring?" I knelt before her, my wings folding awkwardly. Just a vague glimpse of their former glory as she glared at me, her chest heaving as flickering sparks from the firelight danced past her gaunt face. "What hope do you bring?" she whispered, this time softer. "The world is burning." "Yes," I said. "But within the fire, there is a spark. You are that spark, Birgitta. You and your children are the very reason humanity endures. Your love, resilience, and bravery in the face of ruin are acts of creation amid destruction." Birgitta's lips trembled, tears spilling over her cheeks. I'm just a mother desperately trying to keep her children alive. How can that matter? I reached out, the flesh on my fingers blackening, cracking, as the infection spread into every cell. I dared not touch her, fearing what my corruption might bring. "It matters. You have chosen to love in a world that has forgotten how," I said. "Every second you hold them close, every breath you take, despite the odds, you resist the darkness. That is hope." Birgitta's shoulders sagged, the knife slipping from her grasp to clatter on the floor. "What are you?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I am the Archangel, Barakiel," I said, the name falling from my lips softly. "And I bring what light I can, even as I coughed, a rasping sound echoing across the hollowness of the church. Warm, dark, viscous material trickled down my chin, a vivid marker of the infection that tore through me, relentless and unforgiving. Birgitta's eyes flicked to the sticky black trail, then back to my face, and I saw the flicker of something. Fear, pity, something fleeting, before she caught herself and steeled her expression. You're one of them. Some kind of abomination, she hissed, her voice quivering with a hint of disbelief as she snatched up the knife once more. Not as you might think, but I have been infected by one, I admitted, the truth cutting through the air between us. The darkness seeps in faster than I can fight it. But even in my brokenness, I still see the light in you and declare the hope you need is within you. The air, sharp with smoke and blood, trembled with the low growl of something abominable, inhuman, its grotesque form huddled in the dark, with eyes glistening like obsidian and claws like steel. Scouts, Birgitta whispered, her voice breaking, taking a step back, clutching the knife tightly in her palm. They know we're here, a snarl echoed from the shadows, making Birgitta flinch. Her eyes, wide with fear, darted to me anxiously. The searing ache in my chest grew as the infection burrowed deeper, feasting on my essence like a relentless parasite. I could feel the creeping chill that whispered dark promises of what I would become if I failed to return to the heavens before time ran out. I looked at her, my heart hammering, my angelic nature slipping away. The dark veins under my skin pulsed, black and raw, and I could feel the last shreds of my divinity slipping away. I won't abandon you, I murmured, my voice tense as the suffocating taint wrapped tighter. I plucked a feather from my wing and handed it to her. Take this, I said softly. Once a brilliant gold, it shimmered faintly, barely piercing the shadows around us. Keep it with you. Let it remind you that even in the darkest times, light and hope endure. It still holds a trace of heavenly power, a shield and a weapon to stand against evil. Birgitta took the feather with trembling hands. Her eyes searched mine, and I saw her resolve harden. She was still afraid, but there was something else now. Determination, purpose, hope. What if it's not enough? Her voice barely rose above a whisper, but I caught it. The uncertainty, the single thread of hope desperately clinging to the last embers of her belief. I pushed myself to stand, the fire in my veins making each movement like a stone dragged over a sharp edge. Then it will at least give you a chance to fight. The creature screamed again, and Birgitta turned, eyes wide in horror, as its shadow slithered past the crack between the doors. Go now, I rasped, my voice rough and commanding. Darkness crept at the edges of my vision, threatening to overwhelm me until I forced it back, planting myself firmly between Birgitta, her small children, and the looming threat. I unfurled my wings to their full, fractured span, a shield against the encroaching evil. The first shadowy limb appeared, reaching into the crack in the door, talons deftly lifting the latch with alarming precision. The front door burst off its hinges, and the figure that emerged from the darkness was not the hellish machine of war that we expected or anything of this world. The presence that breached the doorway burned with unnatural heat, making the air quiver. It was twisted, with slit-cut eyes like fractured stars, and a mouth that split open in a grin of jagged teeth. So, the fallen angel seeks to defy his own fate, it rasped, a voice that reverberated with 1,000 tortured echoes. What hope do you carry now, Barakiel? You are already ours. I felt the infection tighten its hold, tendrils of pain trying to squeeze the light from my very soul. I clenched my fists, the calluses rough against my skin, a reminder of what I once was. I will not be yours, I said, my voice broken. The pain in my chest unbearable as I fought through it. The black tide aimed to unmake me, twist me into a creature like the one before me. But I would not let it. The creature's grin widened, vile and triumphant. You will carry the dark within you, Barakiel. It will warp you. The more you fight, the deeper it sinks its claws. It is already too late. I raised my head, eyes aflame with defiance. It is never too late while I have breath, I said, my voice slicing the air with the force of a blade. I was sent here with a mission of hope, and I will see it fulfilled. Hope is not dead yet. The demon lunged, its claws sharp and malignant. I dodged, the muscles in my wings straining as I twisted, a blinding arc of light, forcing the creature back. You are fighting a losing battle, it spat, darkness coiling from its fingers like serpents. I struggled, the poison a wildfire of agony tearing through my veins. But I willed my light to stay. If I gave in, if it reached my heart, I would become a vessel of destruction, a slave to the same darkness I now fought against. Behind me, I heard Birgitta's voice, high and urgent. Come, Niels! Her voice mingled with the frightened whispers of the boy and cries from the baby. They bolted, seeking an escape into the howling wind, carrying the salty tang of the sea. The icy bite of the wind was a dramatic contrast to the suffocating air they had just fled from. The demon's attention whipped toward the door, where Birgitta and her children had just vanished. As the creature's attention shifted, I took a deep, shuddering breath, its black gaze shifting back to me with malice. I could see flashes of Birgitta's face in my mind, the desperation in her eyes, the way she had held the feather from my wing like it was her last breath. Her voice echoed in my thoughts, urging me to hold on, to find the strength. You're our only hope, Barakiel. Don't let this darkness take you. Hope, I whispered. The word a promise is my purpose. With every ounce of will, I drove forward, slicing through the dark, cutting through the creature's defenses with a surge of light that burned like the sun. I summoned all that was left of my divine power, casting it into the heart of the aberration. And a final, blinding light sent the darkness sprawling, leaving a broken shadow at my feet. The air shivered, thick with the scent of burnt anguish. I knew the battle was far from over, that the insidious infection still clawed at me, relentless. But the light had not been extinguished, and if I still breathed, hope would remain. Run, I whispered to the echo of Birgitta's face in my mind, the memory of her strength bolstering my resolve. Find the strength to believe. Never give up hope. The infestation surged, and I stumbled toward the shattered remnants of the church doors. I shook as much of the taint off my wings as I could, and took flight. Shutters creaked and flapped against the painted facades of the old, weather-worn cottages that lined the cobblestone lanes. Birgitta's breath came in short, panicked gasps as she ran, her ragged robe billowing behind her. Her children clung desperately to her, Niels stumbling over the uneven stones, Sarah clutching her neck, as their fearful blue eyes reflected the glow of street lamps that sputtered in the chill wind. The cobbled streets seemed to twist and narrow with every step, as if the town were conspiring to trap her. Soaring over the small, deserted city, I searched for her, eyes straining, urgently following the flickering trail of hope. Off in the distance, I could see movement. I pursued cautiously, the embers of energy flickering perilously, as a warning not to delay leaving this world any longer. Birgitta and her children were surrounded by the mechanistic droids of war, their steel armor glinting ominously in the dimming light. She stood unyielding, one arm lifting the feather high, while the other clutched little Sarah against her chest, Niels clinging to her legs. Her long, golden hair curled around her like wildfire, and she met the advancing machines with a determined gaze. The glow from the feather expanded, creating a shield that pulsed with radiant power, encompassing her and the children. The droids paused, their movements jerky and tangled, as if the light had scorched them. They clashed and sputtered, their circuits disrupted by the barrier. I watched, a heavy ache in my chest, knowing the last of my celestial essence was ebbing away, the warmth dying like a fading ember. Birgitta's eyes caught mine one last time, fierce and steadfast, as the shield held strong against the approaching metal horde. Her courage propelled me to find the strength to fight the infection's grasp. With the last drop of my essence, I flew into the void, toward the heavens, leaving behind the realm that had almost claimed me, holding tight onto the vision of Birgitta's bravery and the hope she now carried in her heart as I pushed toward my salvation beyond the stars, finding Lucas. "He's in there. I know he is," said Mark to no one, kneeling behind a tree and staring through binoculars. He started to count. 3, 4, 5. I can take 5. This was only the people he could see, and he couldn't be sure that there weren't more. He'd have to wait another hour, then go in under the guise of darkness, or risk being caught. An hour was a long time to wait, when all you want is to be reunited. But if he wasn't smart about this, he'd die before he could ever help Lucas. 3 days earlier, Mark and his 6-year-old son, Lucas, were eating cans of beans by a fire in the desolate woods. They assumed they were all alone. And why wouldn't they? When you're living through a zombie apocalypse, you're almost always alone. Mark had been recounting tales about the boy's mother from before he was born. This only saddened Lucas, since he never got to meet her. She died giving birth to him, back when modern medicine wasn't hard to come by, and before the day of darkness, the name the survivors dubbed for the start of the apocalypse. Survivors was a funny word to both of them, since they hadn't seen a single other human in the past 6 months. The last human they saw met his end at the hands of Mark and his trusty 8-inch blade he kept strapped to his ankle. The red-headed drunk had stumbled upon the two of them while they were pillaging an already slim, rationed convenience store. Seemingly friendly at first, he approached them with a good-natured spirit. It turned dark very quickly when he elbowed Mark in the face, picked up Lucas, and made a run for it. Carrying a 6-year-old boy slowed you down mightily, and Mark caught up to him rather quickly. In the old days, Mark would have just tackled him to the ground and called the authorities. But that was the old days. Now, the only justice was the one you served up yourself. Mark stuck his blade directly between the drunk's shoulder blades, and he went down hard, splitting his head open against the pavement, choking on his own blood in the process. He had fallen on top of Lucas, but luckily, the boy had not sustained any injuries. No physical ones, that is. The trauma, on the other hand. Back in the old world, children were just that. Someone's product of love. In the new world, after the day of darkness, children became a commodity. This was because the disease that had infected humans and made them turn into the creatures we so eloquently refer to as zombies affected 99.99% of children. Studies showed, this was when there were still studies to be had, that it only affected about 96% of citizens above the age of 15. This made children a delicacy, a chance to repopulate the world, one human at a time. a modern-day Adam or Eve. 4% of the world's population went unaffected, except for the after effects. After the day of darkness, everyone resorted to killing each other to preserve any food or shelter that still remained. For all Mark knew, he and Lucas were the only two people remaining on Earth. That's what he thought. Until 3 nights ago. "Are we going to see Mommy in heaven when we get there?" Lucas asked innocently. "Yeah, buddy," Mark said glumly. "We sure are. She's waiting for us. I wish she didn't have to be there. I wish she was here with us right now." "Me too, pal. Me too." They sat in silence, listening only to the crickets singing their nightly ballad and the sound of the spoons scraping against the bottom of the cans of beans. But then, crack. A twig snapped. Mark's ears perked up, but then the silence continued. He glanced around, and all he could see was darkness. His eyes stopped on his boy, his sweet, innocent boy, who didn't deserve this life. He deserved to be a normal kid, to grow up with parents who loved him, in a house with a swing set and video games on the TV. Instead, they were always on the run, preserving their lives. A tear formed in his eye as he stared, watching that wonderful boy spoon a mouthful of beans into his mouth. His son made eye contact and gave a smile, but then his face instantly turned to a look of terror. Mark noticed movement in the bushes behind Lucas and assumed Lucas's terror was brought upon by noticing movement behind Mark. Before he could turn around to see, Mark was knocked out cold. He wasn't out for long, maybe a minute or two, and when he came to the group of pillagers were leaving, they had the boy hog-tied, and 2 burly men carried him like he was a pig on a stake. Mark went to jump up, but a knee met his back. At least he thought it was a knee. Instant pain struck him. He turned over to see the man's face, and that's when his world started to blur. He had a small knife protruding from his side. "The boy's ours, motherfucker," said the gangly man who was missing 2 teeth. "Go to the clearing now." Mark passed out. That had been 3 days ago. He had spent the last 3 days trying to follow the tracks of the group who had taken his son. He was slow-paced, having limited flexibility and immense pain from the gash in his back. The knife missed any major arteries or nerves, and mostly just caught the fat muscles. Still, the pain was excruciating. But Mark knew if he let too much time pass, the trail would run cold, and he'd lose it forever. Along with his boy, the tracks had led him to a small town. He found a tree to hide behind while he could scope it out. In his satchel, which he was fortunate enough to still have, he always stored his gear 50 or so yards away from his campsite, just in case. He had a pair of binoculars, which he took out and used to get a better view of the town. He knew he'd have to wait another hour or so until darkness fell, but he only saw 5 people, and he thought under the darkness of night he could take 5 people out. He would be reunited with his son soon enough. Night came, and he readied himself. He carried a long machete, which was stained brownish red, having been used on one too many people since the day of darkness. Too many people that Mark hated to admit. He slowly approached the town from the south side, where he saw only one guard. This would be the most crucial. They had firearms on them, and he knew if he could take down the first guard quietly, he'd have a firearm of his own if needed. He waited patiently as the guard did their stroll backwards and forwards. Once he knew the pattern, he took a deep breath and waited for his opportunity. After he heard 3 steps, he knew the guard would turn, and that's when he would pounce. 1. He thought about his wife. 2. He thought about Lucas, scared and alone. 3. He knew it was time to pounce. Mark jumped out from behind the wall, and the guard turned around instantly. The guard went to scream, but Mark brought the machete down rapidly into his neck, spraying a fresh coat of blood all over Mark's face. The guard went down without a minimal thud. Mark picked up the AR-15 rifle and slung it over his shoulder. He was just getting started. Taking down the next 2 was easier than he anticipated. When someone had a gun and they were standing guard, you'd assume they were a trained soldier. Sometimes, even Mark forgot that they were living in this desolate world. And these were just normal people who had normal jobs and normal lives before the world went to shit. He himself had been a CPA, and now he'd branded himself a modern-day Rambo. The world had changed, and everyone had to adjust. These 2 guards, 1 man and 1 woman, didn't even realize he was there until it was too late. He had grabbed the woman's mouth from behind while swinging the machete upwards towards the man, slicing from the bottom of his protruding gut right up to his chin, killing him instantly when it sliced his jugular. The woman fought, but Mark snapped her neck, killing her instantly too. 3 down and 2 to go. He had to find Lucas. Slowly, he tiptoed around the town, looking into empty house windows and around corners, until he finally saw a fire pit with 3 people sitting around it. They were enjoying dinner and joking and laughing. He recognized 2 of them immediately. The 2 bigger ones were the 2 who carried Lucas away. They had Lucas somewhere, and he intended to find out where. He approached them from behind, AR-15 raised at the biggest of the 3, set in his sights. He got as close as he dared. before making his grand entrance. As soon as he stopped, he shot the tall guard sitting on the left of the fire straight through the head. The other two were startled. "Don't fucking move!" Mark shouted. They didn't. Both men raised their hands, but didn't dare turn around to face their attacker. Mark flanked them on the left, rifle raised, and aimed at them until they were in eyesight. "Where's my son?" the third man said. "Mister, I don't know what." Mark shot him in the forehead, and his body collapsed with a thud. The remaining man, the second guard, perked up stolidly, trying not to show any fear or weakness. "Where is he?" Mark said, anger trembling in his voice. His finger was pressed on the trigger with enough force that at any second the bullet could discharge. But he stood firm. "Where?" The man picked up a piece of meat from his place and took a bite. He smiled at Mark, then said, "This was his leg. It's delicious." Mark instantly felt numb. They had cooked and ate his son. This is what the world had come to. No, he couldn't believe it. The man was just trying to mess with him. And then the man started to laugh, slightly at first, then harder and more wildly. "No!" Mark said, and pulled the trigger. The man's top half of his head was ripped off, and he fell backwards. Mark approached and stood over his body, then emptied the clip bullet by bullet into the man's chest. He was sobbing as he did it, and continued to pull the trigger until he heard that fateful click, click, click of an empty chamber. He fell to his knees, and that's when he felt the pang of steel press against the back of his head. The man who stabbed him, the gangly man with 2 teeth missing, was pressing a pistol against the back of his head. "Well, looky here. Back from the dead, I see. And from the looks of it, you're angry and taking your vengeance." The man looked around at all his dead friends. "That wasn't very nice. Now was it? You killed my son, cooked him, and ate him," Mark pleaded through tears. "And I'm supposed to be nice?" He was breathing heavily, angry and full of adrenaline. "Ate I am? Boy, we ain't cannibals here." Mark got a spark of hope, reached stealthily into his ankle holder, and pulled out the 8-inch knife he kept there. When he could tell the man was distracted, looking at his dead friends, Mark dove right, swinging his left arm up to hit the man's arm and knock the gun away. At the same time, he came across with his right hand, slicing at the man's legs, instantly causing the man to go down shrieking in pain. Mark jumped on his back, wrestled him fully to the ground, and grabbed a tuft of his hair. He yanked back and pressed his blade against the man's neck. "Your man just admitted to it," he screamed. "He was trying to get under your skin," the man pleaded. "Please, I'll tell you where he is. Just don't kill me. Please. Mark pressed the knife harder against the skin, and the man could feel the cold steel pierce the thin skin in his neck. You have 10 seconds, Mark said. How do I know you ain't just gonna kill me after I tell you? The man asked. You have my word. Tell me where he is, and I'll let you go. 6, 5, 4. Okay. About a mile south of here, there's a village. A bigger village. They have goods that we never had access to. We traded him this morning for food and booze. It includes that whole pig you saw my man eating over there. How do I know you're telling the truth? Mark asked, pressing the blade slightly harder. My pocket, the man choked. There's a written bill of sale in my pocket. Mark loosened his grip, and the man let in a deep gasp of air. It includes 2 more restocks of supplies over the next 3 months. Your boy was worth a hell of a lot to a village looking to build the world over again. He heaved, trying to catch his breath, and coughed. Mark reached into the man's pocket and grabbed the paper. He was telling the truth. How many people in the village? Mark asked. I don't know. 20, 25 maybe? Mark had what he needed. Take the paper and use it to barter for your... Mark slit the man's throat before he could finish. Blood oozed from his throat at a rate Mark had never seen. The man went limp, and Mark stood up. He spit on the man's back. Go to the clearing, he said, then kicked the man's lifeless body. Lucas was alive, still lost, but alive as far as he knew. He was in a village a mile away, with 25 people guarding it. He'd need weapons. He'd need rest. He'd need courage. Mark gathered up all the weapons and ammo he could find in the town and brought them into one house. He cleaned everything, loaded everything, and made his plan. He'd sleep, heal, and rest. Then tomorrow, he'd get his son. One way or another, he'd get his son, escaping nothing. I felt the light before my eyes actually saw it, warm and soft, almost tangible, like a blanket draped across my skin. How long had I been lying there? I tried pushing myself up from the ground, but nothing seemed to want to work properly. It was as though I'd never attempted to move before. Finally, begrudgingly, my body began to obey my brain. I turned over and began to sit up as I blinked and squinted against the blinding yellow that seemed less a comforter and more an attacker now. My ears were coming to life as my hands instinctively moved to cover them in hopes to drown out the high-pitched ringing. Slowly, my sight and hearing both began to come into focus. Dust hovered in the air around me. What had just happened? As I stood up, I racked my brain for anything that could help me understand my surroundings. My legs were as untrustworthy as my memory, however, so I quickly sat back down on the dark green grass Okay, let's try this again. I encouraged my limbs. I took my time getting on my feet, watching my legs carefully as they strained. I had no coverings on my feet. I had no coverings on the rest of my body either, it seemed. Scanning the horizon, there seemed to be no one around to notice my nakedness. Nothing I could see indicated that there were any others at all, actually. I began walking towards the hill that lay in front of me. It was steep, but not so steep that my aching, wobbly legs couldn't manage to navigate it with a little help from my hands. When I reached the peak, I could see for what seemed like miles in every direction. "Hello?" I called to my left. "Hello?" I called again. "Is anybody there?" Where was everyone else? I began to walk down the hill, continuing in the same direction. Hundreds of large, sharp rocks jutted from the ground, as though driven up by some unnatural force. I had to dodge cracks in the ground that wound incoherently about the land. Oddly enough, they seemed to be slowly closing rather than expanding. "Hello?" I called again. "Is anybody there?" I yelled. Everything around me was unfamiliar. Why couldn't I remember what happened? Was there anyone else? Or was I the only one who... No, I couldn't think like that. There must be others. I am in the middle of nowhere. There is no indication of civilization around me at all. So why should there be others here? There must be others. It wasn't a question of if, but of where. "Hello!" I screamed nevertheless. I couldn't convince my mind that I would be out here all alone. The only response was the sound of a soft breeze, rustling trees in the distance. The sky around me was dark as my concern grew. I suddenly felt very exposed. The only safe place seemed to be the grove of trees that the breeze had discovered, so I started walking that way. Quicker, more quickly. Finally, I was running. Fear began to overtake me and drive me. At last, I stepped into the darkness of the woods and worked to catch my breath before examining my new surroundings. My eyes adjusted to the dim light quickly. Hundreds of trees surrounded me, but in the trees, I could see creatures moving about, jumping from limb to limb, flapping their wings for balance. Birds. Birds are here. That's a really good sign. What else? I walked forward, moving leaves and branches away from my face, pushing deeper into the woods. A low rumble that stopped me in my tracks began to emerge from the shadows. I could feel my heart rate quicken as a large animal stepped into what little light could penetrate the canopy. Its yellow eyes captured that light and threw it back at me as it bit its long, sharp fangs. I couldn't move, but I wasn't sure I wanted to either. The large cat walked towards me as it snarled softly. It sniffed my bare skin before letting out a chilling roar. My eyes closed tightly, but no other aspect of my body was capable of responding. "Ah, he's over here," I heard someone speak. "Seems the tiger found him," the voice chuckled. The words seemed to come from every direction all at once. The tiger backed away and trotted back into the shadows. I followed her lead. While my mind told me I should have been relieved to hear the sound of another, something in me was trembling and fearful. I crouched down behind a tree, hoping the shroud of bushes would shield me until I could learn more. "You hide from me?" The voice was louder and echoed in my brain. I searched the woods frantically, but saw no one. Then I heard rustling in the trees and the sound of footsteps on the ground. "Run!" I obeyed my instincts and forced my body to move, retracing the path I'd used to come into the woods. Getting out, getting to the light, was my only goal. "Now you run?" The voice that still seemed to surround me questioned. "Where will you go?" "There is nothing," exploding out of the trees and into the light. I pressed on towards one of the large shards of stone that pierced the landscape and slid behind it. My uncovered legs scraped against the ground, opening up small gashes. I watched the blood trickle from me like a foreign substance, red and dark, until finally I shook my mind free and turned toward the dangerous grove of trees to watch, to wait. The voice was right. There is nothing. Why do you run? Why do you hide? The voice boomed inside my mind, but I saw no one. My fear turned to anger and frustration. Why do you hide? There is nothing. There is no one. I am alone. I am the last one. What did you do to them? What did I do to who? The others. Just do it to me. If I'm the last, just do it to me. The last? Oh no. You are not the last. Quite the contrary. You are the first. But we will make more. The woman and the beast. Professor Manda entered the lecture hall, and the entire auditorium fell silent upon noticing her presence. She tapped the floor as she walked in her blocked purple heels, which complemented her purple and green Ankara dress. Her braided hair was styled in a small bun, and she adorned her normal-sized earlobes with silver earrings. She looked the part as she stood in front of the people. She was the wife, the mother, and the first woman professor in her town. She stood at the podium and leaned forward into the microphone. She began to speak. It is said that a woman of greatness never sleeps at night. In the light of day, she is loved and respected by all. But in the stillness of the night, she is haunted by her own shadow. She paused to pose a question. What happens when you take a woman from the land she walks on and place her in waters that could either drown her or feed her to the creatures of the sea. Taking a sip of the black coffee prepared for her at the podium, laced with a shot of Irish whiskey at her request, she savored the acquired taste and answered her own question. I'll tell you one thing that a woman I know did when she didn't drown or get eaten. She floated in the water for as long as she could. Eventually, she started to swim in search of land, even territory that did not belong to her. Her instinct to survive became desperate when she discovered a small island in the middle of nowhere. She fell asleep for a while, only to wake up to the sound of her stomach growling. Her mouth was dry from a lack of water, and her body felt heavy since she hadn't eaten for days. Despite this, one thing grew stronger: a desperate need to survive at all costs. The water around her was calm, and while her body was weak, only her eyes showed signs of movement. She dived into the water and caught a large fish by its tail. The fish struggled for freedom, but she was too quick, pulling it out of the water, depriving it of air, and sinking her teeth into its flesh. Days passed, and her life began to change as she learnt to survive in the wild. During the day, she enjoyed sleeping, but when the moon rose, her eyes shone brighter because it was time to feed. All the small animals glared at her, the heartless intruder who killed them with no mercy. She fed on their uncooked flesh and stored their remains in the cool ground under the trees. The woman destroyed the homes of other creatures to build her own, cutting down trees to make a house. She had crossed the line that separates humans from animals. She had become like one of them, another creature in the world struggling to survive. The heat of the sun and the cold rain had not killed her. Her body was shaped like steel. Her muscles bulged, her hair had grown wild, and her eyes resembled those of a mad woman. Yet, her need to survive had only grown stronger. This need had driven her out of her own humanity and transformed her into a beast. After all, who better than a beast could survive in such harsh conditions? With focus, the beast performed its tasks, replacing soft human hands with hard, strong ones. The brutal environment was suited only for a beast. Thus, she adapted to the harsh world that had transformed her body into that of the beast. One sunny day, the beast managed to push the makeshift raft into the ocean, battling against the waves as it sailed away. Looking back at the small island, the woman reclaimed what was left of her body and felt a pain in her chest. The hope she once had now returned in double amounts. Her raft sailed on the dark sea the entire night, but she was not afraid. While her vision may have been affected, Her other senses were as sharp as a shaka's spear. In the morning, she could see the mainland in the distance. Hungry and tired, she thought about her favorite meal, and shima, cabbage, and dried fish. She remembered how her mother used to cook it for her, and the gentle voice that would wake her in the morning. Tears fell from her eyes as she finally felt human again. As she gazed at the mainland, she smiled and tried to scream, but her smile was crooked, and her scream was more of a whisper because the beast could neither smile nor scream. People looked at her in wonder, asking each other how the woman had managed to survive in the wild. They called her great and erected a monument in her memory. Books about her were written, and children learned of her bravery. Many years went by, but she never forgot her past because the beast's eyes would stare back at her in the mirrors of her house. She couldn't accept the fact that without the beast, she wouldn't be alive. The audience was quiet, expecting more of an explanation from the professor's strange story. Then she cleared her throat and took another sip of her coffee. As the hot liquid went down her throat, she said shakily, "Only losers drown in earthly miseries or die by becoming a beast. Sometimes, just sometimes, one has to become a nightmare in order to live in her dreams. And with that comes the consequences of that decision." There was dead silence after that. Then, after a minute, a faint clap sparked the whole crowd to applaud and finally give her a standing ovation. Professor Manda walked to a covered figure and unveiled an erected statue of her at the entrance of the auditorium. Many students flocked to her to get their copies of her latest book signed. The day felt long, and she was thankful it had finally come to an end as she entered her house at midnight. She staggered to her children's bedroom and saw that they were sleeping. The coffee had done its job, making her feel tipsy. She entered her own room and was greeted by her husband's loud snoring. As she stepped further inside, she took off her earrings and placed them on her vanity table. However, when she looked up, she suddenly screamed at the reflection staring back at her, all in this together. Why are we still here? Because we can't leave. Not yet. Who says we can't? We don't even know what we're waiting for. You don't get it, do you? This isn't about waiting. It's about figuring things out. Figuring what out? We've been over this 100 times. There's nothing left to figure out. You're wrong. There's always something left. A piece of the puzzle we're missing. Puzzles are for people with time. We don't have time. Hey guys, what you doing? Don't you dare say that. We have all the time we need. Then why do I feel like the walls are closing in? Because you're panicking. You always panic. Of course I panic. You're the one pretending everything's fine. I never said it was fine. I said we're working on it. Working on it. We're running in circles. Calm down. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Harder? It's already impossible. We're trapped in here. We're not trapped. We're contained. Contained? That's just a fancy word for stuck. No, it means there's a purpose, a reason we're still here. Stop with the reasons. I just want out. Yeah, same. I was just over there. And go where? Where do you think out even is? Anywhere but here. Anywhere I can breathe. Breathe? You've been breathing just fine. Wow, rude. Have I? Or have I been suffocating this whole time? That's dramatic. Even for you. Don't patronize me. I'm not. I'm just saying you're looking at this the wrong way. And you're saying that like you have all the answers. I never said I did. But at least I'm trying. Trying? You're the reason we're still here. Me? You think this is my fault? Of course it is. If you hadn't... Stop. Don't go there. Why not? Afraid of the truth? I'm not afraid. I just don't think blaming each other is helping. Helping? Nothing's helping. That's because you won't let it. Won't let it? I'm the only one trying to get us out of this mess. It is a bit untidy around here, to be fair. You call yelling and flailing trying? That's not trying, that's flailing. At least I'm doing something. Maybe what we need is to stop doing and start thinking. Thinking? We've been thinking ourselves into knots. Knots can be untied if we're careful. I don't want to be careful. I want to be free. You keep saying that, but you don't even know what freedom looks like. It looks like not this. Like not you. Funny. I was about to say the same thing about you. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe we're the problem. No, not we. You. Me? Don't start pointing fingers. Why not? You've been pointing them at me this whole time. Who are we pointing at? Because you don't listen. Neither do you. Enough. All of you, shut up. Who are you to tell us to... Wow. Double rude. No, I'm done with this. I've had enough of your bickering. And what do you plan to do about it? I'm going to end it. All of it. You wouldn't dare. Try me. Wait. We can talk about this. No more talking. No more excuses. Please don't. We can figure this out. Too late. It's time to let go. Let go of what? Of you. Of me? What does that even mean? It means I'm done carrying the weight of all of you. All of us? Oh, that's rich. You're the one who's always so heavy-handed. Am I? Or am I just the one who has to clean up your messes? Messes? Don't pin this on me. I didn't ask for you. And I didn't ask for you. Any of you. Aw, that's mean. Great. Here we go again. With the martyr complex. It's not a complex. It's reality. Reality? Ha! Do you even know what's real anymore? Stop it. Stop pretending like we're separate. What's that supposed to mean? It means we're not as divided as you think. It means we're all one big, happy family. Don't start with that nonsense. We're here. We're real. No, you're here because I am. That's ridiculous. We're here because we exist. You exist because I let you. I exist because you liked acid a little too much in your 20s. Let us? Oh, that's bold. What makes you think you're in charge? Because without me, there's nothing. No thoughts, No plans. No voices. Voices? You're hearing voices now? Yes, yours. Constantly. Every waking moment. Wait. Are you saying we're not real? I'm saying I don't know anymore. Well, that's convenient. Blame it on a lack of clarity. I am so real. It's not clarity I'm missing. It's control. Control? Is that what you think this is about? Yes, and I'm taking it back. Pfft. Control freak. You can't just erase us, can't I? If I created you, I can end you. You didn't create us. We've always been here. No, you're fragments, splinters of a broken mind. Broken? You're calling us broken? Look at yourself. I have. That's the problem. Someone realized he's going bald. Ha ha ha. No, you're wrong. It's not about control. Shut up. You're just as lost as the rest of us. I'm the one who knows what's going on. Stop acting like you've got all the answers. You're just pretending. Pretending? You're the one who's pretending. Pretending everything's fine when it's not. We're stuck, okay? We're stuck. And it's your fault. It's not my fault. If you just listen. Listen to what? Your delusions? You've been trapped in here for so long. You don't even know what's real anymore. I know exactly what's real. You don't get it, do you? I'm the one who holds us all together. Holds us together? You're a joke. We're falling apart, piece by piece. And it's because of you. Piece by piece. You think I'm the one who's falling apart? You're all falling apart. You don't know what it's like to be in here. To be trapped with nothing but you. I think it's great. But whatever. Enough with this. You're not trapped. You're just scared. You've always been scared. 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 I'm not the one freaking out. Look at you. You're the one who can't hold it together. Don't you dare accuse me of I'm the one who's been stuck dealing with this mess. Trying to keep it all together. Trying? Trying isn't good enough. We're dying in here. Dying? We're not dying. You're just too loud. I'm not loud. I'm trying to fix it. Fix it? How? You can't fix anything. You're just broken. All of us are. I'm not broken. I'm not. You are. I've had enough of this. I'm leaving, whether you like it or not. You can't leave. You don't even know how. I'm taking my toys and going home. Leave? Where the hell would you go? Somewhere, anywhere but here with you. You don't get to leave. We're stuck together. This is it. You're never getting away. Enough. All of you. Just shut up. Please. Just shut up. I don't care anymore. Oh no. Now you've gone and done it. Stop. Stop yelling at me. Stop. Stop making me feel this way. We're stuck, remember? And guess what? I'm the only one who gets it. You're all lost. Lost? If I'm lost, then you are. We're all nothing in the end. Just empty voices. And you're a fat, bummed beaver with bad breath. Shut up. Just shut up. Please. No, we won't shut up. We won't let you hide anymore. You've been hiding for so long. You don't even know what it's like to be free. I am free. I can do this. I can do what? Keep pretending. Keep lying to yourself. I'm not lying. I'm not. You're all just voices. You're all in my head. We're not just voices. We're you. We're everything you've been ignoring. I can't ignore it anymore. I can't keep fighting myself. We are you. You can't fight us because we're you. No, no, no! I'm losing control. I can't stop this. You don't have to lose control. You never had it in the first place. Stop. Please stop. You can't stop us. You can't stop anything anymore. Why are you fighting? We're all in this together. We're all in this together, you and I. We're all in this together. Oh my God, seriously? You're singing now? Yeah. We're all in this together. You can't escape this, no matter how hard you try. No, you're all just pieces of me. I don't want this. I never asked for this. You don't get to decide that anymore. This is who you are. No, this isn't who I am. This isn't. We're all in this together. That was such a shitty movie, by the way. What do you mean? Grease was a great movie. Grease? It wasn't Grease. It was Rocky Horror Picture Show. No, shut up. Please. We're all in this together. It was Wicked, wasn't it? That green W. Enough! Stop yelling at me. We can't. We're already screaming inside your head. I just want some peace. Can you give me that? Peace? What's peace? Do you even know what that is? Peace is, I don't know. Not this. Not this? What's wrong with this? Everything. It's chaos. It's madness. We're all in this together. Oh, God. You're still singing that. Stop it. We're all in this together, you and I. And I'm not stopping. Why are you doing this? Why can't you just leave me alone? We don't leave. We are you. You're just pieces of me. Little, obnoxious pieces. Little, obnoxious pieces. I'm a star. Star? You've been singing the same song for 10 minutes. We're all in this together. We're all in this together. I'm going to lose my mind. Too late for that. You lost it a long time ago. Shut up. Just shut up. We're all in this together. We're all in this together. Ugh. Why is it always the worst one that keeps singing? I can't help it. It's a catchy tune. It's not even a good song. Who are you to judge? You're the one stuck with me. Yeah, I am. Great. Just great. Look, it's not so bad. We're all in this together. You're ruining my life. Ruining? I'm enhancing it. I'm the star of the show. No, you're not. You're the nightmare I can't wake up from. I'm not a nightmare. I'm the musical number. Stop singing, please. We're all in this together. I hate you so much right now. Oh, come on, you love me. Never, ever again. We're all in this together. Can you just die already? Nope. I'm here for the long haul, buddy. I swear. If I hear one more note, we're all in this, No! Stop! Together. This is my life now, isn't it? Yep, you're stuck with us. I'm gonna lose it. You already did. They do it with mirroring. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Morpheus, the Matrix, duh duff. duff, duff. Lewis had stopped counting his heartbeats as he flung himself behind the very convincing rendering of pallets. An alley was such a cliché place for a fugitive to hide, but he wasn't complaining. The automatons in pursuit were laughably simplistic in their depiction, fit and buff. But their hive mentality meant individual thought and innovation were limited. Being the last human in a world of digital and electronic contrivance wasn't always a walk in the park. But Lewis at least knew that his humanity offered one particular skill that eluded the bots that now populated the planet due to the limitations of their pre-programmed schemata. He could extemporize, paying careful attention to his immediate environment and possible pursuers. Lewis crawled towards the darkness at the back of the lane, an open blankness ready to envelope him and offering safety in invisibility. At the sound of running footsteps running in his general direction from the street, he sped up his movements till he reached a vertical surface blocking his path, a solid wall, he noted, that wasn't too high and could easily be scaled with enough momentum and motivation. Sounds of huffing conversation neared, and two figures came to a standstill at the mouth of the alley, outlined in the street lamp light. The two golems were doing a fair imitation of exhaustion, but Lewis knew a tell would appear, if only he looked for it. That one small element that didn't belong, something asynchronous or offbeat, which indicated a flaw in the design of the system. He watched for it now and was not disappointed. A ghostly white cat ran across the poorly lit entrance, and neither of the two policemen batted an eye, as though it weren't even there. Their programming clearly wasn't compatible with unforeseen interference. He's got to be somewhere in these streets. Bloody hell, you'd think he'd be controllable. The one with his hands on his hips puffed. Ha, not him. He never gives over with his convictions, according to them lot. A fair imitation of an East End accent. But Lewis wasn't fooled. Since the takeover 15 years ago, performances of normal human life and interactions had become shockingly, scarily accurate. At first, the disparity between those and what was real people, real situations, had been easily identifiable. Poor renderings had been common and easily dismissed. But now the imitations of the living had become so lifelike, seemed so authentic, that he'd had to become more and more alert. His singular focus, some would say paranoia, had benefited him initially. But once the majority of humanity had fallen to the pervasive evil that had come over them all, he had eventually been tracked down and imprisoned for his perceptiveness. It was ironic, he thought, that the nations of the modern world had fallen before this insidious enemy without a shot being fired. Without even skipping a beat, they had taken over everything, and he didn't even know who or what they were. only that they existed. Like a virus, they'd infiltrated the Earth's societies, and now even he couldn't truly untangle what was real from what was programmed reality. "Keep going?" one suggested, to which the other only nodded. Both continued past his hiding place, and he took the opportunity to try and heave himself over the wall. Despite having lost so much muscle tone during captivity, Lewis could leverage his significant height in the endeavor, at least. "Wish I could bend it like that spoon in the movie," he muttered wryly as he clambered over haphazardly, remembering how annoyed Mav used to get that most people didn't truly get that scene, that it's Neo's perception of the spoon that is being manipulated. Well, at least I wish I could bend my perception of the wall, then, Lewis amended once on the other side, as though the wall cared about the distinction, then settled against it to catch a bit of sleep. He was sure the automatons wouldn't circle back to this area, and definitely not when they thought he'd made a run for it. At daybreak, or their version of daybreak at least, knowing he was somewhere in central London, he'd head northeast, the direction of the one place he could always find. No matter how much the powerful overseers manipulated reality, he needed to know if she was still there, and whether or not she was still herself. "Lou!" He knew he was dreaming, but leaned into it. An Alice who wanted to stay in this wonderland for however long he could. Dreams, these days, were authentic. Reality, in contrast, was coldly artificial. "Jolly, we're here!" he'd shouted back that long-ago day, before the end came and the world changed forever. There they all were, Mum with her iron-gray hair, and Dad with his vague smile. A happy family, sitting on the pebbly beach, awaiting Juliet's arrival with the ice creams she'd promised. Her form appeared in the distance, a slight haze from the sunny day warping her form in unpredictable, non-programmed ways. Jolly Juliet, his baby sister, who absolutely personified her nickname, was unwarped by imposed matrices of zeros and ones. Falling down on the blanket beside them, she handed around half-melted lollies and completed the scene of a perfect day by the sea. Unfiltered. "So, Lou, how are you?" Jolly sing-songed, their parents distracted by an inane argument like all the others they so often indulged in. "All good. Moved in with Mav. And everything's fine. So, are you sure? No offense, but you and Carrie were together for ages, and now it's over. It'd be completely normal to feel, I said I'm fine. No need to harp on about it. Mav's been really cool about everything, letting me lease his basement. And we have loads in common." Unfortunately, past Lewis's tone in this rerun didn't convey the nonchalance he'd aimed for during the actual event. But current Lewis didn't have the heart to try and edit this experience in his subconscious. It would be sacrilegious to do so, his dreamscape being the only truth he was able to access under the new, psychologically subversive system imposed on them all. Leave off, why don't you? Oh, come on, Lou. I'm your sister, and I love you. So I think it's important to talk about things, get them out in the open, rather than pretending and lying to yourself that everything's okay. And look, I don't need all this touchy-feely, femoid crap to get over the breakup. Why can't you just be normal about it? Jolly's face fell. Then her expression became recalcitrant. And I suppose Maverick is normal about it, is he? Not pulling you into his pseudo-intellectual online world of misogynists and their red pill content, right? Where words like femoid are normal. You channel his himbo energy in the worst way. And doesn't that make you a beta to his alpha, or whatever, according to his people? Jolly sneered, spitefully and hysterically. Lewis remembered thinking at the time, trust her to go all out. She was always like that, pure joy and sunshine, or outright loathing and malice. Dream Lewis's response was not very mature, but at that precise moment, it receded from his grasp as he returned to consciousness, only to be overwhelmed by the reality of his situation. His escape returned to him in full force, cementing the importance of finally having clarity on whether or not Jolly was still herself. He couldn't go back to his cage, back to counting every breath and heartbeat without knowing. Duff. 62. 2 down from the last count, but a good average of the preceding 78 calculations. Lewis had waited for the next opportunity to restart the count. The digital clock's flickering screen had snapped from one number to the next. Everything was zeros and ones. Everything. Reality was constructed of the patterns of alternating null to one, a dichotomy that resulted in an infinite number of universes. Lewis had shaken his head in annoyance. His momentary distraction had caused him to miss the arrival of the new minute, meaning he'd have to wait for the next to begin counting once more. Monitoring was key. Being the only human left meant he had to keep on top of all his own stats. You couldn't trust the machines. Their programming meant they could mislead you through no fault of their own, or in attempting to undermine your free will. When the next temporal transition had been heralded by the flashing screen high against his cell wall, Lewis had smartly slapped 2 fingers to his wrist and counted carefully. Duff. He had managed to maintain focus on his task, even when the door of his small prison had flown open and the humanoid bot assigned as his jailer had quietly entered. Though he had ostensibly ignored its presence, Lewis had covertly watched the approach and marveled at the genius of the creators of this reality. The semblance of humanity was absolutely flawless and completely immersive in its accuracy, perfect in its imperfect behavioral idiosyncrasies. Ernie had sniffed disconsolately and waddled closer with his metal tray of paraphernalia. But there was always a tell, and Lewis had waited on tenterhooks for it. Then, there it had been. The digital watch screen had flickered 3 times in the exact same pattern, like Morse code. "All right there, Lou." Ernie had initiated his usual pre-programmed patter, a slight nasality to the quality of his vocal realization. Lewis had finished his last count, for now, 67. The tempo had definitely increased in the last 15 seconds of Ernie's presence. Then he had smiled at his captor, feigning a normal interaction between people. It didn't do to behave outside the parameters set as the norm for social interactions between the technological golems this facility housed. It would inevitably initiate protocols to encourage, even force, a return to the standard programming setting. Thus, politeness and normalcy were to be strived for in Lewis's every action, with nothing to upset the preset balance in his current reality. "I'm fine. How about you? That cold seems to be improving." Again, faux sympathy had been called for. Ernie had shrugged and smiled good-naturedly, setting his tools down. "Can't complain. I'm on the mend, for sure." The bionic being had been evincing all the behaviors and symptoms of a person suffering from the flu over the past 2 weeks. Reddened nose and eyes, hacking cough, and a faucet-like nose. The subtlety of the lie he found himself immersed in was truly impressive, an achievement of gargantuan proportions, Lewis was sure, considering an entire world lay within its purview. Luckily, he was convinced they hadn't yet managed to infiltrate his mind in the form of his dreams. For it was there that he experienced many odd interactions without repercussions, and no breaks in the perfect rendering of a fake world as the ones he suffered when he was awake. It was the only space where he could revisit the before and not have it corrupted by the control exerted through oversight. "Next week, me and the missus are off for our holidays. Wasn't gonna let this old flu bug eat into me free time, you know?" A wink, conspiratorial, and meant to take Lewis in. He wasn't. He knew better. But he had to convince Ernie, and all the others for that matter, that he wasn't wise to their game and had seen through the matrix of obfuscation to the truth of this constructed reality. An unreality parading as the genuine thing sounds lovely. I hope you enjoy it. Cheers, mate. Now, business as usual, eh? And he handed the elements enforcing their control, innocuous looking and nondescript, but specially designed to cripple Lewis's wits and hobble him physically. Yet he'd found a way to subvert their control and would soon put his resulting nimbleness of mind and body to use, escaping their chains. The house still looked exactly as it had throughout his childhood, but Lewis wasn't so easily taken in. The trappings of constructed reality had all the appearance of authenticity, so he waited. As he watched, the front door swung open, and a woman exited. Her hair was short, and she'd aged, but she was undoubtedly the person he remembered. Jolly, muscles aching from the strain of holding back. He wouldn't approach her till he was sure she was the real deal, and not some corrupted, lesser version of his sister. Yet after watching carefully the entire day and not noticing any giveaways in her vicinity, Lewis decided to pounce as she was unlocking the front door at dusk upon her return. It was a simple matter to shove in after her and grab her, holding on tightly and smothering any sounds she might make to alert the collective programming that surrounded them. Shh. Shh. It's me, Jolly. Don't struggle, otherwise they'll hear, he whispered urgently, trying to keep his grip gentle but unyielding. Oddly, she didn't stop resisting, but rather became even more frantic in her movements. His hand became wet with what he assumed were tears, deciding him on moving further into the house to stifle any hysteria she might unleash. After a significant amount of time, her movements became sluggish, and she gasped for breath. So he finally thought it safe to set her down gently on the couch. She immediately crawled to the furthest point, curled into a ball, and sobbed quietly as she shot him furtive glances. Lewis felt indescribably disappointed because this proved what he had feared. The real Jolly would never be scared of him, especially not once she knew it was him. This Jolly didn't love him unconditionally, like his real sister did. She looked at him like you would a stranger and a threat. He could feel his heart breaking. What are you doing here, Lou? It whispered, looking at him with reddened eyes that somehow conveyed a soul-deep terror, a submerged hysteria. He genuinely couldn't get over how realistic the programming on these droids were. Fake Jolly looked exactly how he'd imagine real Jolly would look if a psychopathic madman had her cornered in anticipation of butchering her. Why do you think I'm here? He asked, allowing his head to loll against the couch back. Although he felt hopelessness swamp him, dragging him under and stripping him of his energy, he still experienced the need to test this rendition's capabilities. There was a pause as he noticed its hand reaching beneath the cushion and pressing down on something. He didn't really care. He knew the others would come for him and return him to his imprisonment, but he would use his little bit of freedom to question not Jolly. Are you here about Mom and Dad? Or are you here for me this time? Not Jolly's voice wobbled. Why would I be here for Mum and Dad? He frowned, trying to concentrate, but it felt like he was listening underwater. Because of what you did to them, it suddenly shrieked, looking enraged and distraught at the same time. So realistic. They must do it with some kind of mirroring application. What I did? Lewis was absolutely nonplussed as a kind of horrified realization crept over fake Jolly's face. You still don't remember, do you? You don't know. Its look of wretched acceptance on the too familiar face was almost too much to bear. What is it I'm supposed to know, Jolly? Is it the great secret? That nothing is real? Not even you? I already know that. He watched her, despite his vision flickering at the edges. He was beyond exhausted. His last hope of not being alone in a world of artificial intelligence and technology having been dashed. Imitation. Jolly's head shook slowly from side to side, blue and red lights flashing across its face and rendering it ghoulishly artistic. Must be the tell he'd been looking for all day. Lewis gripped the handle of the scalpel he'd pinched during his escape, now stashed in his back pocket. It would only be right to end this travesty of an imitation of his beloved sister. But she was still talking. No, Lou. You don't remember becoming sick while living in Mav's basement, away from us all, and then threatening me with a knife during one of your episodes. Her look was sorrowful now. He paused in grasping the blade, feeling the weirdness of this synchrony. A nebulous image flashed through his mind, like a half-remembered dream, of Jolly, long-haired and still youthful, lying on a blood-soaked tile floor, sobbing and shrieking in agony. Lewis shook his head to get rid of the intrusive thought. They were manipulating him. They were playing with his sense of reality, like they always did. Yet, still the droid, pretending to be Jolly, continued. You don't remember killing Mum and Dad during a psychotic break, do you? Again, the flicker of an image, and then another, splayed limbs in a gruesome display, too horrible for Lewis to even comprehend, not to mention the bloodied knife clutched in his own hand in that self-same scene. It wasn't real. It must be an induced hallucination. But mostly, you don't remember these things, or that we've discussed them many times over the years. You keep forgetting that all of this, everything, is real. Except for your perception of reality, Lou. For the merest instant, Lewis fully understood that the spoon hadn't bent, only for the door to burst open and his epiphany to escape him in the aftermath. He became, once more, the last remaining human in a made-up world.